Okay.
I need to mute it, so I know that it's running, but I need to mute it. Oh wait, I know. I'm just gonna mute the tab. There we go. I muted the tab. Now, if any audio appears,
Okay.
it's gonna be
And we are live. So, welcome back.
brilliant.
This is another stream where we're responding to something. Last time it was the Monopoly on Violence documentary. This time it is an article by a group of Marxist journalists. Who would have known that journalists were Marxists? Surely not I.
It's better to ask which Marxist.
I think that would be a quicker and more efficient process.
Yeah. at this day and age, yeah.
Yeah, so, welcome.
This is gonna be painful.
And my chat is working on the live stream. So, I'll be able. Not only will chat be forever in the video, but we'll be able to see it just by looking at the stream. You don't even need the live chat feature.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Okay, so the article is called Critique of Bourgeois Science, Microeconomics from the Explanation of Value to the Invention of Marginal Utility up to the Mathematical Praise of the Market by Gegenstandpunkt.
Standpunkt. This critique, but
So, this critique by the German Marxist group Gegenstandpunkt traces back the logical errors of marginalism, allows itself in its reasoning, and shows that its tautologies become increasingly crass in the development from the theories of Mengel, Jevons, Wallace, and up to later concepts such as indifference curves. Now it's interesting that throughout this article, they're going to go from Austrian school to neoclassical school to Keynesian school, and kind of just like not differentiate between it. This is it's all free market economics.
Oh, right. Okay, never mind then. If it was like an historical approach where they approached each section and how they evolved, like the classical school and so on and so forth and whatnot, then maybe there could be some merit. But of course, they're going to treat all schools of economics as the same thing. After all, it's just economics. Who cares about economics?
It's all bourgeois. That's why they said it in the title.
I don't want to sidetrack, but I want people to know what bourgeois means. It just means city boy. A city folk, a city person. That's all it means.
Okay, so who is going to be reading the article?
Probably not me, because I keep coughing.
Okay, I think it should be Taylor then.
All right, that's cool. All right, so.
Speech impediment.
All right, so I'll start. First section. What experiences common to everyone could certainly teach some economic truths concerning commodities and money. In the free market economy, everything has its price, from bathing water and cinema tickets to hospitalization. The freedom given to everyone only gives one access to all the necessities and pleasures that the market has to offer. Its limit is, of course, the amount of money that one has at one's disposal. Poor and rich divide according to how much of that substance they possess, which represents wealth par excellence and is used to quantify their wealth, even when it exists in the form of all kinds of material goods. As important as the characteristics of a house may be for its inhabitants, a machine for its user, a foodstuff for its consumer, and as unimportant this quality becomes when all objects are estimated on what they contribute to the wealth of a private person or an institution. Then their usefulness becomes a self-evident prerequisite of the price that they could achieve on the market if their sale were pending. All right.
Bruh.
Yeah, so that last sentence there is the most interesting of the entire paragraph. Then there Usefulness becomes a self-evident prerequisite of the price they would achieve on the market if their sale were pending. Now, it's kind of true that the subjective value of a commodity is based on what you can use it for, but that's in the eye of the beholder. For instance, you might look at a toothbrush and be like, "Oh, I can clean my teeth with it." Meanwhile, I will look at it and be like, "Oh, I can clean my gun with it." And so we'll have different uses for the same item, just depending on, what we want to do generally.
Yeah, and it looks like they're kind of just attacking the value theory without even really addressing it at first in the first paragraph of the article. I mean, this is definitely
Wouldn't that
like
wouldn't that be poisoning the well or something like that?
I don't.
Since they're attacking it before even explaining what it is, setting
Yeah.
up a false premise.
Well, I mean, these people rarely act honestly, even in their academic works. So.
I mean, what can you expect from them? But
But all right. So, does anybody have
don't
anything to
even-
say about that last sentence or anything else in the paragraph before I go on?
the entire paragraph talks about money as if they're just a number that exists that determines how much you can buy, rather than even mentioning why people have the money. They just skip that. But it's as integral to know what money is for as why people have it, isn't it? Are they gonna move on to that later?
They're going to attempt to.
They're going to attempt to. Sweet lord.
Yeah, it's I mean, I've read some of this article previously, and they do go on later, and I'm sure we'll encounter that, but they never really attempt to even bring up, like, they bring up like Bombavrk and Menger, but they don't bring up like one of the most important Austrian works. Like they address the two, first Austrian school guys, but they never address the guy who really has the best theory on money. And I think it was either by omission on purpose or that they just genuinely don't know that Mises exists, which is funny.
I mean, if they skipped straight to Keynesian economics, there is a good reason why they completely ignored Austrian economics.
Yeah.
They're going after what the mainstream is basically diluting.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that you say that Mises has the best view, because he is very much building on Karl Menger and von Barwick.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's just he has the, like, pretty much every major Austrian right now would say that, like, the theory on money and credit, the theory of money and credit, is probably the book that you need to read to, like, understand, like, the Austrian school in terms of, like, money creation and money itself.
I think I used that book in this one thing that I made. I just can't recall. Anyway.
All right. So yeah, anybody else have anything else for that little introductory section?
I have a brain tumor.
Nope.
All right.
That's random,
All right.
Thauma.
All right, so point number 1 under section 1, the doctrine of economics, the indispensability of money for the market economy. All right, so, holy shit. This phenomenon that all goods have their price and that this has its measure is in money is subjected to a peculiar appreciation in economic science. In rare unanimity, the theorists make use of the comparison with barter in order to discuss money as a way of solving the difficulties in the distribution of... I lost my place.
Social wealth.
Yeah, social wealth. Hold on, I lost my place on my... Here.
Or fine.
Social wealth, the confrontation with the cumbersome procedure of getting hold of things that one needs or wants to use in direct exchange of goods for goods makes use of the notion of a production based on the division of labor that is dependent on exchange, but that does not have its means available at the moment. Instead of a determination of money and price, this notion, without further ado, aims at a plausible explanation of the advantages that money has for economic people. on the condition that everyone is dependent on exchange. He will hardly be able to close himself off from the services of money. The simple message is money simplifies economic activity, announces Samuelson in his bestseller, and all textbook authors imitate him when they cannot imagine a high-level economy based on the division of labor. The functioning of the overall socio-economic process are simply markets and prices without money, if in addition they adopt the contemporary comparison with an authoritarian directed economy, which has taken on the basic economic problem of distribution of scarce goods, with another possibility they do not notice that the explanatory character of their discussions cannot be too profound if the same problem, in which they have to observe the reason of money, causes just as well that unsympathetic coercive management of human individuality. Rather, when looking at the certainty, not contemplative matter, money, they officially give expression to their ideological preferences and interpret the choice of one or the other possibility as a consequence of individualistic or collectivist views of man.
So, the most interesting thing of this paragraph to me is that they use Samuelson in his bestseller, which is an economics textbook. And it's funny to me because Austrians actually refer to this as mainstream economics when attacking mainstream economics, and they basically use that textbook to kind of like explain what's really wrong with economics education.
Yeah, he's using this as like a critique of like all free market schools or like all market schools. Essentially, these people are so, like, I mean, it looks like they're going to critique the idea of a market itself going on with this. So I mean, it's funny because Austrians would look at the Samuelson bestseller and be like, well, this is inherently flawed and they're working from false principles, and then they're saying that like this is what they all work from, so here's why it's wrong.
I love how many things they put into quotation marks.
Yeah.
Are they quoting someone or are they trying to be sarcastic? I can't tell because, I mean, if you want...
I think they're trying to use their terms to critique them, to critique them. You know what I mean? Like working from their own language.
But they cannot imagine a high-level economy based on the division of labor, the functioning of the overall socio-economic process, or simply markets and prices without money.
Yeah, I mean, all of those quotes just add "without money" to the end of it, and I think it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, they cannot imagine blah without money, and blah without money. I mean, how do you have the language of exchange in places of exchange if you don't have the language of exchange?
Yeah, well, they're going to get into this, and it's going to be kind of interesting. Well, we should get into that later because
Yeah. There is still another paragraph out of like 20.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Well, right. I was actually going to the confrontation with the cumbersome procedure of getting hold of things that one wants to use in a direct exchange of goods for goods makes one use the notion of a production based on the division of labor that is dependent on exchange but does not have its means available at the moment. So are they... I'm trying to figure out what the hell that they're talking about there.
They're talking about, like,
They're comparisons with barter, but they go on to the next thing, sentence. Instead of a determination of money and price, this notion, without further ado, aims at a plausible explanation of the advantages that money has for economic people. On the condition.
That's the sentence that kind of struck me the most while I was reading it. Is like they're like, are they saying that in their view that not everyone is an economic unit? Because I think that's what they're really going at here.
Absolute unit. Economic unit. Economic people. As far as I know, that economic people means just people who interact in the economy? Are they saying that there are some people who don't interact in the economy? Yes. Those
Yeah.
people aren't people. That's a joke.
Yeah,
That's a big joke.
I mean, there are
I mean, if
people
we're-
like monks who just go out into the wilderness and live off the land.
I mean, sure, yeah, but
That's economic action, dude.
Yeah, I was about to say that is an economic action. There
Like,
is
I don't know what they're going at here.
there was
what if you are hold on, what if you are born and don't do anything?
Just lay there.
Just exist.
Yep.
Wait, that's an economic action too. You decided not to interact with the things. Even the action of being born, which isn't an action at all, you are an entity that enters a society of some kind or a group, like a family, and even that itself just adds a new entity that can interact with the economics of that group. So how can you say that there are no that there are some people who are not economic? How can you have that?
I would like to see them address that because, like, if they really brush over them putting economic in quotes and then just like trying
The
to
economic.
let that go, I think that would be pretty bold on their part. Like saying that,
I
like,
have an
yeah,
idea.
that's bullshit. You know,
I have an idea. I wonder what it would be like to read this entire thing, where if something is in quotation marks, you have to say it in the like most annoying voice you can, like mocking.
what would you want, like urbanite New Yorker, or
No, like
would you-
no, like
New York Jew.
Instead of a determination of money and price, this notion, without further ado, aims at a plausible explanation of the advantages that money has for economic people. Because
Well,
that's the
that's
way
what
it feels.
I mean, that's what they're saying in their head. I mean, for sure.
That's how
like,
it feels.
like just how the
Money
tone of this is like
simplifies economic activity.
the tone of this so far, and we're not even close to like the meat of this. Is
We
that
are at the beginning.
they're annoyed with the fact that they have to address this. Like hundreds of years of like real economic science, and they're annoyed that like they would have to address these things.
Imagine having to address the entirety of economic science. This meme was made by the what is economic gang. What is uneconomic?
Yeah, what I think we're going to find as we go through this is that there was a reason why in the 19th century socialist and economist were considered to be antonyms.
Yeah.
No, Origin. I want to click back to the article. Anyway, how about we start reading the? Or is there anything more to address?
I think we shouldn't try and harp on too much at these beginning paragraphs because I think
It's gonna get worse.
It's gonna get way worse, and
Well-
I can feel it in my bones.
Well, this next paragraph is actually getting to the money thing that I wanted to hold off on because they're going to give a definition of money, like talk about various definitions of money and
no.
describe it, and then say, yeah, economists just don't want to talk about
Define money.
define money.
Okay, let's go through it. Take
All
it
right.
away.
All right, so when economists get over the trick of talking about markets, prices, and barter, purposefully leaving money aside so that they can draw the conclusion that without this means some things would be impossible, the question remains as to how money manages to fulfill its mission as a means of exchange and unit of account. Information of the following kind is then good scientific custom. Money is used because others use it. If a good gets endowed in such a way that it finds general acceptance, it is called money. That's not surprising at all. Whoever identifies the services of money with the need to get away from bartering by means of a general means of exchange to conduct market economy is also capable of the psychological continuation of his deduction. The willingness to treat a good as money then clears up everything into the well-informed definition of money, which a German economist of what reputation, Erich Preisser, like Samuelson, has mastered. Money is everything you can pay with. The great Meyer can confidently join in. Money is everything that functions like money. Pricer is aware of the procedure he uses to deliberately avoid explaining money and notes in order to instruct his readers that modern science itself makes an assumption out of the facts that its object exists. The reason, without money, there is no market economy, so as before. I think I should read this quote before we address it for sure.
Yeah.
We simply assumed tacitly that it is there. This assumption is necessary, but it is also sufficient. It is necessary because the market economy, of course, could not function without a general means of exchange.
Right. And
Like all other all right.
like all of the Prizer quotes taken from Economics Today. Now it's really interesting because they Prizer is aware of the procedure he uses to deliberately avoid explaining money, and then he quotes Pricer just below a general means of exchange. Like, you know, he went through an entire paragraph talking about money, then at the end gave a definition of money, and then he's like, oh well, they avoid explaining money. It's just like how
It's just like we accept that it's just like, hey, look, I'm gonna read this thing. I'm gonna read the first sentence, and the rest be damned.
And
Yeah.
again, I
Like-
think they could just be setting this up to address it later. Like I said, I haven't read this whole thing. But I mean, they're really just like putting stuff out there and then not addressing it whatsoever. And I'm thinking that if this is the model of the entire article, then they're going to be in trouble. Because right now they're
Alright,
just
yeah, no. They're not setting anything up. Just read the thing right below it.
okay. Since such communications only express explicitly what is contained in the logic of impossibility, the means of exchange must exist. The experts of economics tend to constantly emphasize the achievements of prices, which are paid with money, in order to indicate, besides the sheer presence of their object, still another respectable service.
Stackelborn wrote, in a market economy, prices have the important function of regulating the strength and direction of the flow of goods.
They're not doing anything other than saying that economists use money as an argument, therefore they're wrong because there is one too many definitions of what a money is.
Well, it's not even that. It's like the quotes that they have. That money is everything you can pay with. Money is everything that functions like money. Money is used because others use it. If a good gets endowed in such a way that it finds general acceptance, it is called money. These are basically cherry picks. I'm fairly certain that in each one of these examples, they will define money as something like a general means of exchange or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And again, like they're working from a from a premise that it doesn't really address what money is. You know what I mean? Like they're just saying that like, oh, all these people view money as like something that's necessary in a market economy, but they never, so far, they haven't addressed at all what those people actually say, like how a money rises up to be that. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh.
yeah, you can call it just anything that's just a means of exchange, but I mean, like you have to. I mean, this is where the Austrian view is important.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's just so far this just seems like cherry picking quotes to make the other side sound stupid.
I
But
wish
in
I had a
reality,
Bible
they're
so I
not really
could pray.
addressing it.
Yeah,
I wish I had a Bible so I could pray because this paragraph that's coming is so long.
Yeah,
I'm becoming religious. This thing is making me religious because I need God to help me through this.
So apparently
least
I
you don't
need to
have to
send
read
you
it.
more Marxist literature so you can become Orthodox Christian.
No, I'm not gonna become Christian. I need a more powerful deity.
oh jeez.
I need something beyond Yahweh. I have no idea what is beyond Yahweh, but yeah.
All right.
Anyways,
So-
and
Oh,
just
I know.
spoiler alert, they are not going to
Hello.
talk about how money comes into being. They're going to basically assume that money is something that capitalists invented, essentially. And so there's no
Oh
need.
boy.
And so there's no need to like explain how it came into being. It's just like, oh yeah, money is an invention, essentially. It's not
I mean,
actually needed for.
technically speaking, the forms of money that exist in modern day are technically an invention, but the concept is a discovery.
Yeah.
Like, we invented coinage to make money easier to manage,
Yep. And we
not
and
the other way around.
and we basically I wouldn't say invented, but innovated money receipts in order to more easily carry around money substitutes, which we call cash.
Yes. Yes.
Well, at least it used to be cash. Now it's not backed by gold, but anyways.
It's backed by not even backed by oil anymore. We don't need.
It's not even-
We don't have anything.
It's backed by the beautiful faith in the government.
Yep, government fiat. It's literally fiat money.
Yeah, it's
It's money because we said
to
so.
the
Anyway,
to the
let's
nth
continue
degree.
then.
Yeah, let's continue.
Yeah,
I think we've squeezed as much we can out of that.
Yeah,
But there is the question: what is money? Economists therefore always translate into a completely different one. How must money be constituted to carry out its services? And by the functions of money, they always mean those which they have intended for the means of purchase in the market economy. They present themselves realistically in their questions and answers insofar as they point to generally known phenomena of economic life: inflation, crises with unsellable commodities, price increases, imbalances, in other words, in which problems that seem to contradict their ideals and call into question the fine effects of the price mechanism come into light. Bruh! Inflation, crises with unsellable commodities, price increases, imbalances, in other words, those are problems not associated with the concept of money, but associated with a currency that is
So,
doing things.
where did you
Yes, I
just...
skipped a little.
Oh, okay.
I skipped through the article that talks about market mechanism and competition order and blah blah blah, all the way to the question: what is money? It's like 1, 2, 4,
Right here,
7, 8, 9,
anyone
10,
who's
11,
watching.
12 from bottom. 12 from bottom.
Yeah.
There's only one person watching, and that's probably me because I have it open.
Yeah, so
Depression.
yeah.
No one's awake.
I
this is a
think
good exercise.
I think we should go and read this and
We
then
should-
try to respond to it.
Yeah. All right, so I'll read this long ass paragraph. Thus, long before it is developed into a utility or household theory, economics announces that it appreciates the market mechanism or the competition order for the well-known law of interaction, according to which the level of prices determines the relationship between supply and demand, and conversely, this relationship affects prices. In this law, science pays the market the complement beyond and without a determination of price, that it leads to a distribution of wealth by subjecting the demand for goods to the solvency of its carriers, just as if the economic mankind had encountered the problem of regulating its flow of goods and fell for money to distribute the goods equally by means of a price. Economic theory allows itself the assumption of an equilibrium price. A hypothetical category of this kind summarizes the idea of interaction in one term and gives less information about the nature of the market than about the interest of an entire specific scientific discipline and its functioning, on the basis of the idealism which, in the purchase and sale of goods whose prices can be measured by the money fortunately available, sees the interest at work to transport all elements of material wealth to where they belong. The realism of economics then arises. On the one hand, their representatives devote themselves to household decisions as factors of price formation, whereby they present consumer behavior in a faithful continuation of the dogma of the interaction between supply, demand, and price, once as the determinant of price or its level, once as a reaction to price levels. On the other hand, they ask themselves the question of the conditions which would need to be met in the economic world in order to ensure the success of the market in accordance with the task assigned to it. And money also becomes such a condition. And this is because it was considered from the outset to be the means responsible for facilitating exchange and nothing else. The question, what is money? Economists therefore always translate into a completely different one. How must money be constituted to carry out its services? And by the function of money, they always mean those which they have intended for the means of purchase in the market economy. They present themselves realistically in their questions and answers insofar as they point to generally known phenomena of economic life: inflation, crisis with unsaleable commodities, price increases, imbalances, in other words, in which problems that seem to contradict their ideals and call into question the fine effects of the price mechanism come to light. Pricer manages to first discuss quite rationally the condition for money to be suitable as a means of purchase, namely with reference to the character of money, which makes it a means at all.
Quote, if it is to be used as a means of payment, especially for the purchase of goods, it must obviously have value itself, because otherwise no one would be willing to give away a good for money. We have experienced such times.
All right, do we want to address that or go on? That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it again, just so I can try to understand it, because I kind of got lost in the middle, and when the question "what is money," I kind of picked it back up.
Yeah, it is a lot to unpack here. So it looks like they're trying to critique the entire money mechanism as a means of exchange by saying that it is only necessary. I mean, honestly, I'm just trying to unpack this, like saying that means of exchange aren't necessary and money as itself isn't necessary for that exchange. I think that's what they're trying to do, and they're trying to say that, oh, because these different economists disagree on what exactly is money and why different schools can't address the problem of inflation or price changes, that makes the process inefficient or ineffectual at all. And I mean, that's a really, really bold claim. I hope they somehow defend that better than they've been doing.
They also
Yeah. So
assume, they assume that economists say that, where was it? Right. And money also becomes such a condition, and this is because it was considered from the outset to be the means responsible for facilitating exchange and nothing else.
Right.
They're not facilitators of exchange.
The first thing I think I'm just gonna go through this top to bottom. One of the first things I think we should address is equilibrium price, because we talked about this before the stream, so I think it would be good to just go through it for the sake of the stream. There is in Austrian economics, equilibrium price doesn't have much sense because supply and demand is changing temporally, as well as people's desires are changing as well. So there can never really be an equilibrium, quote unquote. Things will approach an equilibrium, but as soon as something changes, it basically starts the process all over again. For instance, the marginal revenue product of labor tells us that the wages that labor provides approaches the added value of that labor to the business over time. And such that, but when, let's say, a new technology comes out that makes labor more productive, well, then obviously the value added is going to change, and therefore the wages are going to change, and it's going to kind of start this approaching process all over again. And this approaching process can be fairly quick, especially in a modern economy, because there are many firms that want your labor, because all of this is based on competition. Oh, that other company is going to get $14 of value from, and they're going to pay $13 in wages. That doesn't benefit me as an entrepreneur, so I'm going to offer him $13.10 to get that $14 of value, and then so on and so forth. Other people are going to keep on bidding up all the way up until $14. Hopefully that made sense.
Hopefully. Because I caught only half of that.
Oh, am I
Yeah,
breaking
I'm
in and
just-
out?
No, you're good. It's just I think we're both trying to. I mean, we were listening to you, but we're both trying to just what exactly this paragraph is really saying, especially with like the claim that like they're reaching an equilibrium price. I mean, like, what exactly is he like? Where? Because there are like certain like free market schools that don't necessarily even value an equilibrium price, like you said. Like the Austrian school doesn't really have much use for that sort of theory because they understand the subjective nature of all value. So for them to just say that like all like means of a price working towards an equilibrium price, I mean that's just not. I mean, especially for us, that's something that we genuinely don't care about and don't really view as something that is even possible.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah,
Come
I
to
think.
think of it, the fact that it is temporal, that's what makes it impossible to find an equilibrium,
Mm-hmm.
since it just makes the, like, if you want, since like supply and demand, and then there is the other dimension of time. If you want to have an Austrian graph of supply and demand, you're gonna have to start working with third dimensions and try to find an equilibrium there when one of those dimensions is one directional. You can't.
Yep.
It's just like everything changes all the time. So congratulations, you built a pyramid. Now everything's flooded. Congratulations. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, I think a really
It's like,
interesting piece of this paragraph is, on the one hand, their representatives devote themselves to household decisions as factors of price formation, whereby they present consumer behavior in a faithful continuation of the dogma of the interaction between supply and demand and price, once as the determinant of price or its level, once as a reaction to price levels. On the other hand, they ask themselves the question of the conditions which would need to be met in the economic world in order to ensure the success of the market in accordance with the task assigned to it.
wait a second. They just they just combine microeconomics and macroeconomics. We
Yep.
have one part where we're talking about household decisions, as in the micro, and then on the other one we have the world economics or whatever it was said, and you can't do that. No, the economic world is the whole thing. That's macroeconomics. You can't just skip from one field of economics to the other. That's like talking about astrophysics and then just jumping straight to quantum physics, which technically you can, but not like this. This
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
going from talking about the age of Earth and then being like, okay, so anyway, electrons are this.
yeah.
Sure, both of those things are technically the same field, but it's not the same field. It's the same science, but not the same field. There you go. That's how. That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. This is also interesting because, as an Austrian, we would see this quote unquote consumer behavior as informing the conditions which would need to be met in the economic world, such that the demand is one side of the coin in terms of determining how and what to produce, and this is the conditions which would need to be met in the economic world. So once you know once demand is there, supply can basically be calculated. Um, not calculated, but it can be formed to meet that demand.
It can calculate itself.
Yeah, no, I shouldn't have said calculate. It should be once you know what people demand, you can figure out what and how much to produce. And so it's one side of the coin. And the fact that supply and demand basically determine the price of a thing is fundamental to all of economics.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're trying to critique itself.
Yeah.
Like that they're just going after that entire notion because they're going after the idea that what they're doing now is they're really going after the idea that prices are necessary.
I figured it out why they're going after all of this. Because it critiqued their ideas this one time, they have to now dismantle the whole thing.
Oh, for sure.
I'm genuinely surprised that they haven't pulled an Adam Smith out of somewhere, probably because Adam Smith supports them. But I'm pretty sure that if you gave them enough time, they would find a way to critique even him.
Oh no, they do critique Adam Smith later on.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
How?
They talk about the invisible hand and say that it's basically a religion or something like that.
Which, I mean, even us as like Austrians, like, well, I mean, we can definitely address that later whenever they try to. It's just like we don't talk about the invisible hand either. It's the price mechanism. It's the structure, the price structure.
Allegory. It's an allegory. It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
It's a comparison.
Yeah, I was about to say, the only way I can understand it through Austrian economics is to say that the invisible hand is symbolism.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a symbol for the price mechanism for the calculation of prices.
It is as if an invisible hand led the market. It's the as if there. It isn't that an invisible hand controls the market. No, it is as if an invisible hand controls the market. This is basic.
Right, anyway, but they're going to say that the as if is still like this assumption that is unproven. But anyways, we should deal with that when it comes.
Can I just like do a little continuation of the tangent just to address that stupid idea in its entirety? The idea that saying as if somehow constitutes like a reality of some kind or an assumption is like saying that I walked across the bridge as if I was led by an invisible hand is the equivalent of saying I was literally led by an invisible hand. I'm gonna go start a new religion now. No. One decision being exact as if it was led is not the same as a thing being led. Those are two things. Let's carry on. I wanna jump out my window. I wouldn't. Nothing would happen to me. I would probably scratch myself. Maybe if I fell under a bad angle, I would break my neck. But it's like 2 meters, so.
All right, so I'm gonna read.
I'm
gonna read the quote.
Well, we already read the quote, but I thought.
Oh yeah, you did.
I thought the last part was actually something that we should address. They present themselves realistically in their questions and answers insofar as they point to generally known phenomena of economic life, inflation, crises with unsaleable commodities, price increases, imbalances, in other words, in which problems that seem to contradict their ideas and call into question the fine effects of the price mechanism come to light.
Yeah, that is definitely something that we should address for sure.
I was trying to address it earlier, but like, why? Does this have anything to do with a general means of exchange, or does this have anything to do with currency?
Yeah.
These sound like problems of currency, not problems of money.
Well, and here's the thing. I want to say, they'll just throwing these issues out, and they're not even like making an argument why they seem to contradict their ideals and call into question the fine effects of the price mechanism. They're not even like addressing how this happens. So it's really hard to even address what they're saying. They're just like, oh, there's these problems that exist. They contradict what you're saying. So but it is very interesting that they kind of just bring it up, and unless they like immediately go into this, it's basically poisoning the well, just saying like, oh yeah, there's these things that exist that just contradict them.
How?
Yeah, claiming that like there are things like it's funny, like it's like the idea of market failure, like that they try to bring up all the time. There's just like is there such thing? Like you would have to really address that. Like just say that like, oh, capitalism is bad because of market failure. Saying that money is bad because currencies get inflated, or that there are price increases over time. Like I don't understand. Like
Are they
like
trying to
saying,
claim that? Are they trying to, with the price increases? Are they trying to claim that prices and money is something objective, set in stone thing? Like it's an objective value,
Well,
an
no.
objective evaluation.
You'll see that in subsection 2 or 3 that they actually call their labor theory of value the objective theory of value.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna need a tiny break. I'll be right back. If that's okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
Yeah.
fine. So anyways, I just thought that this was interesting because it's basically throwing all these things out that are fairly complicated to talk about, and this being like, oh yeah, it contradicts them, and it really is poisoning the well. But it's
oh, for sure. It's quite a. I would say it's quite a lacking argument. I wouldn't say it's dishonest yet, but I would say that it's a little bit lacking in terms of addressing why these problems happen. But again, this isn't an article that's trying to explain these processes. It's literally just saying that these processes aren't necessary, especially with price. I mean, this is going to go on, I'm pretty sure, to say that prices aren't necessary as a means of exchange, or that exchange can happen without the market process,
so
and that economies can occur without these sorts of processes.
what I mean by it's poisoning the well is that I kind of looked ahead, and they're not going to be addressing this fairly soon. And so if you just like bring up things and say, oh, it contradicts their whole worldview, and then don't address it, it is poisoning the well. That's exactly what it is. They're not even,
Yeah.
because it would be one thing if this last part of the paragraph was like explaining something like a paragraph or two down, like introducing a concept that they're going to go into, because that would actually be good writing.
Yeah, that would be like a real academic article.
Yeah, but just to bring it up and not explaining it at all, just say it contradicts their thing, and that's poisoning the well.
Yeah, that's just like raising a question and then not addressing it and leaving it to the reader to make a conclusion without even really supporting it.
Well, it's not even raising a question.
Oh, true. There is no real question here. They're just saying inflation happens, money bad.
Yeah. Like, it would be one thing if they said inflation crises with commodities, price increases, and other imbalances bring up questions about how money and prices, like the money and price theory, like it brings up questions about it. That would be one thing, because it would be like, okay, we can actually address that. But
yeah, for sure. That would be something that would be fairly, good to suggest if you were really trying to truthfully critique the idea of price structures and money. But right now they're just saying that these problems happen, and it's a guarantee. And it's just something that I guess they're not going to say as to why or where or
Well,
what their exact alternative is, unless that's later on.
yeah, I mean, but it's not even like a page down or a page and a half down.
What's
It's
happening?
oh, we just kind of went into the poisoning the well and just explaining why it is poisoning the well.
Okay.
I didn't want to move on too much without you, so we decided to talk about something that we kind of introduced before you left. So, do we want to just move on?
Yeah, sure. I feel like we're gonna have a lot to unpack later on too.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, now they're just saying that because price increases exist, that they're implying that money is bad. So let's go on.
Here,
Colton, you already read that quote. Here, for once, indeed, the willingness to accept money is not confused with the definition of money. And even more, Pricer also knows the notion of measurement, the unity of quality and quantity. But then there's another. The unit of the means of payment is also the indispensable unit of account in which prices are expressed. Costs calculated and incomes measured, but the value of economic goods can only be expressed in a measure that itself has the dimension value. Okay. However, this theorist also does not continue in such a way that he determines the dimension value, the common measure of commodities and money, according to its quality. As soon as he has established that money must have value, he remembers that it is also the only practical achievement of money that matters to him. It troubles minds beyond theoretical efforts. Therefore, he joins the practical considerations of a money owner who is heartily indifferent to the value of money, but to whom his power to buy goods means everything. Without hesitation, he identifies the success of the purchase with value.
I think the quote should be read.
Okay. It is also clear that this value is not attached to money itself, but is derived from the goods that can be bought with money. In other words, money has a derived immediate utility.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things is that they're talking about value and they're separating it from the value of economic goods, which at this point we have to ask what do they mean by value? Because this is actually something that I didn't notice this specifically when I was first going through it, but later on I was like, what do you mean like by value then? Because there's something else later on, way further on, that is talking about value and how it's not related to costs or costs of demand or anything like that. And I'm just like, what the hell is value then?
Yeah. Well, labor, apparently.
Yeah, but I mean,
I
we can say that labor is valuable, but if they don't mean economic value and therefore
then how?
could
Yeah.
accept the subjective theory of value of economic value, it's like, okay, you have a neat thing that you prefer to value, it's a personal preference, but it has nothing to do with economics. It's so they should really define what value is, because they're separating it from the value of economic goods, which is economic value. Like,
And now this seems to be a critique of economics itself. Like now they're really going into it, because if they're saying that that value is intrinsically a bourgeois, like a bourgeois value is
What
value,
is
you know what I mean?
that? If that's what you guys are bringing out of it, because I don't understand anything they are saying, because that is just lathered in so much jargon, and this is definitely a goddamn paper. Because why do you need to explain everything in such verbose means? Why?
it is a very
Just say
German.
it.
It's a very German way of explaining things.
Yeah, this is a very very German paper.
Yeah.
No, that's a very verbose. Germans aren't necessarily verbose. No. Anyway, if they're trying to attack value for it being a concept and trying to claim that it is invented, then they don't even understand humans, I guess, at all.
Because they're
Like,
not people.
Oh, and actually, it's kind of interesting that it's Pricer himself that is saying the value of economic goods can only be expressed in a measure that itself has the dimension value. Um, Meanwhile, okay, no mind. It is how I was describing it earlier. Um, this theorist does not continue in such a way that he determines the dimension value. Well, here's the thing. He kind of already explained what the dimension value is. Because actually, no, did he? The value measure of commodities and money. He does actually kind of explain what he means by value. So, as the journalists here, right, as soon as he has established that money must have value, he remembers that it is also the only practical achievement of money that matters to him, its purchasing power. The purchasing power of money is its economic value. And so, to say someone is concerned about its purchasing power but is also heartily indifferent to the value of money is nonsense. Because, purchasing power and the value of money is basically interchangeable, as can be seen. In the second quote, it is also clear that this value is not attached to money itself, but is derived from the goods that can be bought with money. In other words, money has a derived immediate utility. So, it's kind of they're basically confusing the value of economic goods in terms of probably price with its value in an abstract sense. But it's true that this value in an abstract sense, the subjective theory of value, does reveal itself in prices.
Yeah, absolutely.
to a good degree, yeah. There are other factors in prices, but yeah.
Yeah. So
Right.
Prices are just collective uh, assessments of subjective views of something. Because, what are prices if it's just two people trading a thing?
Yep.
Does that really set up? Which is the prices that these guys are talking about. They're talking about like prices in a region, not a price of something, like the value that the people try to exchange something in.
Oh, and Taylor, if we're about to end a paragraph and it has a colon that goes to a quote, I think we should read the
just
quote.
read it.
Yeah.
That's just gonna be like, oh yes, there is a quote. Oh wait, this isn't complete. Okay, we need to read the next one and the next one and the next one, and then we just read the whole thing because there is like 10 of these.
Yeah. It's so talking about that. The next paragraph starts with "and," so it's basically just a continuation of what he's been
It's a
talking about.
continuation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't even know. Should I just
carry on.
Just carry on with this one paragraph at a time because it's going to if we try to read the entire article and then respond to it, we're gonna miss so many things about it.
Yeah, true.
Brain is not gonna function.
All right, and inspired by this insight, he recalls the times that he has already experienced in which the purchasing power of money left much to be desired, from which the conclusion can be drawn that at that time the relationship between goods and money, for whose success he strives, had got quite confused. Whether one gets anything at all for money and how many goods one can buy depends on the amount of money facing the goods. an increase in the money supply with the quantity of goods remaining the same. We can also say an increase in monetary demand with the supply remaining the same will increase prices, i.e., lower the value of money. This is the content of the so-called quantity theory, which draws attention to the quantity of money, and which is only another expression for the fact that its relative rarity determines the value of money.
Where are we? Oh, this quote. Okay, I finally found it.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting that he says that the purchasing power of money left much to be desired when he's talking about inflation here, because there was
Yeah, he's
nothing.
talking about an increase in the money supply.
Yeah, there is nothing in there that says the purchasing power of money leaves much to be desired. He's talking about when you just print out more dollar bills, it's going to lower the value of each individual dollar bill. Like,
Yeah, they're addressing money as a government-controlled currency, or even like, it could be even a private currency or something like that. They're addressing currencies that can be manipulated, not exactly money itself.
Mm-hmm. So it's they're basically talking about currency and not necessarily money here, which
I hate that conflation so much.
yeah. So the money supply, it's basically talking about currency here. Like, that's what money supply is about. It's all about currency, not necessarily money. They're two connected but distinct concepts.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move on, because I feel like we're going to have to unpack a little more about this flawed theory of money that these people have.
Yep.
The condition stated here for money to function as a means of exchange is simply, it must be there in the proper measure! Exclamation point. Weird placement of that. This is a very frank farewell to the stage of monetary theory, which claims to provide information on the concept of money, through which the reason and purpose of this economic means would also be grasped. Because the right measure is just as relative as the definition of the monetary value that quantity theory allows itself, it is only in the functioning not only of the market, but of the entire market economy with its manifold conditions, factors and goals that it becomes clear whether money performs the services for which economics constantly congratulates it. The creation of money is part of current economic policy. Therefore, the theorist cannot even state what the correct measure is. What is the right measure can therefore only be decided in connection with the overall economic development and all the objectives driven by economic policy, but not within the framework of a monetary theory pursued on its own. We can only say for certain that any deviation from the policy of stable prices is dangerous. Wow. Okay.
How they are gonna be claiming that the entire reason why money is money and money is just the state?
It's because of policy.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just read just read the mega paragraph. It's the last thing.
No.
Okay, yeah.
I think we should address it must be there in the proper measure. The quote that right before where he says it must be there in the proper measure, he's not actually talking about what quantity of money, what the money supply should be. He's just saying the necessary consequences of an increase in the money supply itself.
Yes.
And so this is actually part of monetary theory, money but it has nothing to do with the exact measure that it should be. It's just saying that an increase from here will mean an inflation or an increase in prices or lowering value of individual currency pieces.
And this goes back to them working from the framework that there must be some sort of equilibrium in a market economy.
Right, which not all schools of economics even agree with, unless...
Nope.
I don't even think the neoclassicals really have an equilibrium theory. I believe it's mostly the Keynesians that have it.
Keynesians in the Chicago school, possibly.
Right, but the Chicago school...
I digress.
Yeah, the Chicago
Yeah.
school is it's
Yeah,
kind
like
of
a
interesting because they don't have
equilibrium.
much theory. They have because their entire thing is all about results. So it's like,
Yeah, like I said yesterday when we were talking, I'm not a big Chicago school guy. Never really got into them, but I know that making them any or reading them any different than a lot of Keynesians is a mistake
yeah.
for a few of them at least.
Oh yes. Oh no. So I look up uh economic equilibrium, and then immediately the first person that is even mentioned is new Keynesian economists as under school or tradition. Bruh.
Yeah, the it's really interesting because if you look at the neo Keynesians or the post Keynesians or whatever the hell they want to call themselves, they actually call themselves realist socialists. They're not even calling themselves capitalists anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, why is he bringing up equilibrium prices in oh whoever the journalist is bringing up equilibrium prices when it's the
Okay.
socialists that believe in it.
Okay. So I actually just Googled Chicago school equilibrium, and part of the monetarist theory or belief system, I guess, is that the money supply should be kept in equilibrium with the demand for money. So they believe in an equilibrium price for money itself.
Well, I don't even know if it's so much an equilibrium because they're saying that the demand of money is changing over time and the supply of money should change along with it.
Okay, so yeah, that's separate from equilibrium theory itself.
Yeah.
It's just a different use of the word. Okay.
Yeah, so that's one of their theories. Another of their theories is that they should have a set rate of an increase in the money supply so people can know
Adjust accordingly.
adjust accordingly.
Okay.
I
Um,
hate. Uh, economics is just one giant game theory. Thanks for watching.
thanks for watching, guys.
No, it's it literally is though. All the problems are just game theory problems. And these
Game
people are
theories Game theory is bringing me back to my poli sci days. What a nightmare.
it's just like it's all about exchanges which are part of game theory, and it's just like, come on, why are you doing this? Why are you constantly conflating everything?
All right, anybody else have anything on that last thing? I think we're going to have a lot to address in this next paragraph.
I mean, of course, it's about the size of the entire web browser that I have.
Same.
Yep. So let's
But
go.
all right. Thus, economics assumes a price mechanism that functions precisely through price changes and regulates the flow of goods, and casts doubt on this achievement of price if it demands price stability from the state in dealing with money. It certifies to money that it circulates the price-determined goods for free of all temporal and local barriers, which are complained about in barter, and makes them commensurable, but denies that goods which are commensurable among themselves and with money have a common measure. That money is a means of circulation this science has noticed, to the question through what it is suitable as such. It gives the answer by supplying the unit of account for prices and mediating exchange from the fact that economic entities are confronted with the market, price determined goods and money. It deduces its determination of money. It is needed for exchange, so it makes it possible, and that is its achievement. According to this logic, the reason and purpose of price and money is that they correspond to the necessities of an exchange, which is imagined independently of them as a need. And as often as money is awarded this invented advantage as its purpose, the authors of this idea think of one or the other case in which this advantage does not come into force, or in which dangers and disadvantages of money become apparent. Sometimes prices and money precisely do not allow exchange, prevent it, so that economists are faced with the decision to understand the negative judgment which is included in their logic of possibility from the outset, either as an argument against their positive deduction of money, or finding that one or the other purchase will occasionally be left undone for a thing external to money. They choose the second alternative and put the blame on the economic subjects, which usually immediately the state, for wrong handling of the means of exchange. The success and failure of the transaction, which according to their theories is a matter of money and prices, is then not a matter of money, but of its handling. And this is decided through the needs and relationship that subjects establish between them on the one hand, utility theory and theory of consumer behavior, and through the quantitative relationship between money and goods on the other, quantity theory. Thus, contrary to all experience and despite the expression of the opposite, the assertion can still be saved that money and price are clever inventions to satisfy the need which exchange in a society based on the division of labor serves. All right.
Okay, so yeah, this is going to require unpacking because I kind of got lost at that money is a means of circulation. This science has noticed to the question through which what it is suitable, such as it gives the answer by supplying the unit of account for prices and mediating exchange. Deduces its
So long.
yeah.
Like I heard it, but I didn't understand it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of what I did. And the reason why I called it Teutonic is because this is how I when I was first reading Hoppe, this is kind of how I read him, and I was like, there was a lot to unpack here. I'm gonna have to read this paragraph like 5 times before I understand it.
I
However,
didn't get the experience from the paragraphs that I've read at all. No, it's more of the fact that he just explains everything as precisely as he can.
yeah,
But here it's the opposite. It's just imprecise. It's billions of words that mean nothing, all put together to try to mean something. What are you talking about, paragraph? What are you trying to tell me?
yeah, there's a lot of that here.
Also, just
Oh,
thus,
oh.
contrary to all experience and despite the expression of the opposite, the assertion can still be saved that money and price are clever inventions to satisfy the needs in which exchange in a society based on the division of labor serves. They constantly talk about exchanges and about how money and prices, I guess, are inventions, but like they
Who
merely looked at it from such a weird angle. They
so
cherry
in the
everything.
market economy, so it's, if they're gonna say it's an invention, in the market economy, who is the czar of determining the price of a Corvette? In other words, who is determining the prices of sports cars?
The funniest way to completely dispel that is to ask, "Oh, you mean the starting price, the retail price? Do you mean the price that is sold when someone doesn't want the car anymore? Which price? Because a price isn't value." And
Yeah,
money isn't a determinant of all value. No, value at its core is subjective.
yeah.
At its
I
core, it
think
is how you see it.
I think an interesting sentence here is in the middle of the paragraph. According to this logic, the reason and purpose of price and money is that they correspond to the necessities of an exchange which is imagined independently of them as a need. So what they were saying is that
Oh yeah, actually, hold on. What they're saying is that essentially, since economists define needs as, I guess, needs, and profit just say that exchanges are born out of needs, that they try to claim that the economists then shoehorn in money and prices and all that in order to get their little system to work, in quotation marks. Is that what you're trying to say?
um somewhat. So what I'm trying to say is that they're basically saying that prices and money are imagined as a need by economists, but really these exchanges are independent of prices and money.
Another little sentence that I absolutely hate is sometimes prices and money precisely do not allow exchange, prevent it.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. I guess that's what they're saying is that when a price is too high, that someone can't buy something. Is that what they're
I
saying there?
They're just saying that they cannot exchange the things. It's essentially like, how exactly does that work again? Isn't exchange a thing where one gives something for something of the other? Like that's the basic reason for exchange. Like it's the basic definition of
Ah,
exchange. Are you trying to tell me that prices and money precisely do not allow exchange, prevent it, in the sense that I cannot go to this person and be like, "Oi, give me that Lambo. I will give you this fucking copper coin for it," and he is just like, "Okay, fine," because there are no prices and money is meaningless, and so you just traded a Lambo for a copper coin or something like that, because that's how it sounds to me.
yeah. So I think in order to really understand what they are saying, we should go through the entire sentence instead of just the section. According to this logic, and as often as money is awarded this invented advantage as its purpose, the authors of this idea think of one or the other case in which this advantage does not come into force or in which dangers or disadvantages of money become apparent. Sometimes prices and money precisely do not allow exchange, prevent it, so that economists are faced with the decision to understand the negative judgment which is included in their logic of possibility from the outset, either as an argument against their positive deduction of money, or the finding that one or the other purchase will occasionally be left undone for a thing external to money. That is an interesting statement, because how can prices and money prevent exchanges when the purchase will occasionally be left undone for a thing external to money? That doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't know.
So
Actually, if we read the second sentence, they choose the second alternative and put the blame on the economic subjects, usually immediately the state, for wrong handling of the means of exchange. What are they trying to imply with these two sentences?
So the wrong handling of the means of exchange, typically what they'd be talking about is inflation, which is actually what they were just talking about before this entire huge paragraph.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
what they are probably talking about is inflation increasing the prices of goods such that the poor who do not get the inflated money right away, they're usually the last people to get inflated money. They all of a sudden can't purchase things that they used to be able to purchase. This is not
Yes.
a issue with money per se. It's an issue with inflation and the state, or really anyone, fraudulently increasing the money supply. A
It's
private
literally it's not even a problem with money. It's a currency issue. A currency issue in which the currency is fraudulently increased in amount. The value of the things themselves doesn't change in this scenario. It's entirely just the value of the money in quotation marks. That is, the currency itself is inflated, and as such, the ratio between the currency and the product, they just change. That changes, and as such, the prices go up. That is the entire theory of behind inflation. At least that is how it's practically. That is how it practically works, and they're essentially trying to say that this is a problem with the concept of prices and money. This isn't a problem with the entity increasing the amount of money. This is just a problem with. Actually, no. This is a problem with increases and decreases in quantity. This is a problem with the quantity. This is a problem with the sheer fact that there is something quantized being used for exchange, which just means that this is an issue with the concept of exchange.
Right, and actually they kind of go into this. So they choose the second alternative and put the blame on the economic subjects. The success and failure of the transaction, which according to their theories is a matter of money and prices, is then not a matter of money but of its handling. And this is decided through the needs and the relationship that subjects establish between them on the one hand, utility theory and the theory of consumer behavior, and through the quantitative relationship between money and the goods on the other, quantity theory. They actually go into like, oh yeah, it's the handling of money, which we would probably call currency, that is the issue. And they're going to have to explain, which they're not going to because this is the end of the paragraph, like how it is money and not the inflation itself that is the issue.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they first of all conflate money with currency, and second of all, they like to constantly harp about how economists assume that exchange is even necessary to happen for goods to travel, like for goods to get from point A to point B in some capacity, like for people to get what they need. That's something that I have noticed. At least I think I have noticed, because it might be something that I'm just overanalyzing. But
Yeah.
they just constantly talk about exchange and exchange and exchange that, exchange this, which is important to talk about. But the way they talk about it is as if it is something that too is invented, that too is made to essentially limit things.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. Thus, contrary to all experience, and despite the expression of the opposite, the assertion that can still be saved, that money and price are clever inventions to satisfy the needs which exchange in a society based on the division of labor serves. That's an interesting claim compared to what we just went over. They didn't go into a issue with money. They went into an issue with currency and how inflation of currency leads to basically price changes. Also, something I wanted to bring up but I kind of forgot about is price stability. Now, price stability is not something that Austrians actually are concerned about, except when it comes to like things like inflation and the Austrian business cycle theory, because let's say all of a sudden people start hating chocolate ice cream and only want vanilla ice cream. That's going to lead to changes in prices. But
Yes.
that's not an issue.
No, that's just the thing happen.
Yeah, that's just the thing happen.
Event.
So it's not price stability that we are concerned with. It is basically this intervention in how the currency is being handled, essentially. Not so much being handled, but how the currency is. So, because what's ending up happening is when you inflate something, you have to introduce it into the market somehow, otherwise it doesn't matter. Like if the Fed, if every single dollar the Fed printed, they just stuck it under their mattress so that they have a huge mountain of a mattress, it wouldn't matter to the economy. So it has to be introduced some way. And what this, in effect, does is it causes a wealth transfer from the entire economy to whoever they are giving it to. Defense contractors, banks in order to lend it out, government employees, because they have to cover budget deficits, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's it has nothing to do with they haven't criticized monetary theory. They have only criticized essentially
monetary policy.
Yeah. And
yeah, actually,
And their criticism of inflation here is not something that I'm actually that opposed to.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much everyone except I don't know, Keynesians, I guess, criticizes inflation, and it's stupid not to criticize inflation because everyone can see its effects. Prices just go up. People who earn money now can't afford that many things. But that you cannot put that squarely on the entire concept of money
Okay.
or
I
value.
I am going to be right back. You guys should go to subsection 2.
Okay. Yeah, I'll read it.
Okay.
I wanna cry.
Yeah, this is rough. um, all right. So economics tells of a homo economist who appreciates money because it enables exchange. The physical citizen of the economy gets to know money in a completely different way. He is unlikely to notice the supply of liquidity in the coins and banknotes issued by the state. No one is given gifts of money to trade because everything has its price, not even the well known social benefit in the course of the opening of the FRG, the 40 new German marks bounty, could be misunderstood in this respect. It was clear to everyone that from now on it was important to get as much money as possible, i.e., to obtain purchasing power. How this was not to be done was made quite incidentally clear by the state in the text of the law which it had printed on the banknotes. Anyone who imitates or counterfeits banknotes, dot dot dot, that is hardly in keeping with the rumor about those notes which ascribes to them the innocence of a welcome means of assistance. If a state uses its power to make money suitable as a means of exchange, then it certainly does not raise individual needs to the purpose of economic life. Rather, it subjects their satisfaction to the solvency of their bearers. On the quantity of the publicly supervised substance that one owns, one's activity in the world of pleasure depends. And in this respect, one may add a small correction to the economic wisdom that money enabled cheerful buying on the bazaars of the market economy. This measure of wealth also calls into question the availability of it a little. After all, the means of exchange which has been forcibly put into operation separates all needs from the objects corresponding to them and allows them to come into play only on condition that the price is paid to the person to whom the objects belong. Admittedly, a theorist who is in love with the law of supply and demand and who puts much emphasis on the wisdom that says if price is high, don't buy, overlooks very confidently the hard law of private property, which is put into effect with price and money. All right.
What are
So
they talking about? Are they talking about inflation? Are they talking about private property? Are they talking about market economy? What are they talking about?
so they're essentially I mean at the end of the paragraph definitely referring to prices being rooted in private property and saying that supply and
No, the other
demand.
way around.
Oh, okay.
The hard law of private property, which is put into effect with price and money. It's price and money that upholds private property, not the other way
Okay, so
around.
it's price and money that upholds private property, not the other way
According,
around.
according to this, anyway.
Yeah, according
Uh,
to this.
I am back.
All right. So yeah, we know these people are anti-private property, obviously. So I think we should definitely address the claim that I mean, obviously the one that's closer to our hearts, is that they're saying that pricing and the pricing structure and money is only connected to the hard law of private property, and that prices and money lead to private property, which actually to Austrians that's not that crazy of a claim because
It's actually the opposite though.
Okay,
That
yeah,
private property creates prices of money because without private property there is nothing to exchange and therefore there cannot be a price and therefore money is meaningless.
yeah.
yeah, and I would agree with that.
So it's not that prices and money create private property. It would be that private property creates the need. Well, private property in a sufficiently complex economic society
Yeah,
creates
yeah,
the
yeah.
need for
Actually,
money, and therefore there are prices.
we should read the whole sentence. Admittedly, a theorist who is in love with the law of supply and demand, and who puts much emphasis on the wisdom that says, if price is high, don't buy, overlooks very confidently the hard law of private property, which is put into effect with price and money.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hopefully this is the end of the paragraph. So hopefully the next paragraph tells us what the whole law of private property is and how this the law of supply and demand overlooks it. So maybe we should read the next paragraph and then come back to that and see if because part of writing is sometimes you're supposed to, the last
Yeah.
sentence is supposed to be an introduction to the next paragraph, but I think the very first sentence of this is very interesting. Economic tells of a homo economicus who appreciates money because it enables exchange. Now, this whole homo economicus is very interesting because um, this is actually a criticism of Austrian school that I see a lot by the mainstream, and it doesn't really make any sense because when we talk about rational actors, we're not talking about people who are basically scientists, engineers, all of this, and they're figuring out the best possible way of going about their lives. What we mean by rational is that this actor acts in a way that he thinks will lead to his ends.
That's that's isn't that just the basic of what rationality is anyway? Like, you don't have to be the smartest individual to understand what is good and what is bad and which way to go and stuff like that, and ra- like
Right,
rationalizing.
but it doesn't really have to say about what is good or bad. For instance,
No, no, no.
if I wanted to bang my head against the wall, me putting into motion actions that would lead to that would be acting rationally in terms of Austrian
I know.
economics.
That's not what I meant by that. I then said which way to go and stuff like that. It was examples of criterions. Like, you want a good thing, so you have to know what's a good thing. That's about it. You want a bad thing, so you have to know what the bad thing is. You want to know how to do a thing, so you find a way to learn the thing. You just you find the problem based on the criterion, and then you rationalize your best way to best means to reach it, or means to reach the means, or a means to reach the means to reach the means, and so on and so forth. You rationalize. That's why it's rational, because you rationalize, not because you have the biggest logic brain, right?
Well, and there's also the I just pulled up the Mises quote. Essentially, what Austrians mean by rational. If human action always aims at a purpose, which by definition it does, then human action must be rational. That is consistent with reason or guided by one's will and intellect. It can never be termed irrational. So Mises's claim here was that all action is rational.
Well,
Well,
that
this is
because it's all
nonsense.
related to an end, like I was saying.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
no one acts just to act. They always act because they want to, have some end. There is some end they
but
want to achieve.
what if the end is to act?
Yeah, even if you try to disprove this by just acting in order to act, your end is to act. Your end goal is to act, so you have accomplished your
Yes,
end goal. There's
and you
this
just
is the thing with they actually it's kind of interesting. I think they would classify this as a tautology, but it's really just deductive reasoning and a priori logic. Essentially, is that um, statements that um, cannot be
The fuck is
contradicted is not necessarily a tautology. It's a because tautologies are basically things that are true by definition. This is
This is deductive.
This is deductive.
Yeah.
So
All right.
So no one is giving gifts money to trade because everything has its price.
Also, Colton, this might have to be like a 3-part stream, by the way. we're not even close to getting halfway through this.
Well, actually, a large portion. By large portion, I mean about what we've read, but from the bottom, is just sources and comments.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, I was about to say, you're not ready for an 8-hour stream?
Yeah,
I am definitely not ready for an 8-hour stream now.
Shift. But I think honestly, I know we probably should have discussed this before the stream, but we should go up to where they address Menger and Bomboverk, and maybe do this again whenever Thauma has a little bit more time, and we can read over it. But we can discuss that at some point. But
that actually sounds good, because that is a good place to end, so we can talk.
Yeah, it's a good cutoff point for sure.
Yep.
But I feel like I am just here to be here.
Oh no, I mean, I'm not talking an incredible amount, so you're helping out.
I know.
But all right, so we should probably go on to the next paragraph, because it looks like they are going to address the private property problem. Ooh. But all right, so
the law of private property.
Oh no. The law is very familiar to an ordinary mortal who feels the exploitation of his solvency. In his experience, there is no consolation in the fact that a price mechanism, in a textbook fashion, forces the impertinent seller of a commodity to lower the price as soon as demand leaves something to be desired. In any case, the economic doctrine of harmony with its ideal of balancing interactions cannot help him to get over his limited solvency, just as little as advertising with its ever same message of cheap commodities. He must ration himself in the purchase of useful goods and services, and he cannot rely on the fact that his forced austerity will come to an end because the suppliers of business articles are fighting over his budget. The fact that there is a contrast between the interests of the seller and those of the buyer is safeguarded precisely by the majority of economic entities, which always use money only as a means of exchange, even in cases where the buyer is also a businessman and the commodities to be sold are not a means of consumption. No joy about the equilibrium price arises. The result of supply and demand, the price of commodities traded, in no way automatically fulfills the economic purpose of those who act as suppliers and buyers. They may not regard the price mechanism as a central control instrument for the successful distribution of goods, if only because the respective price is intended to guarantee proceeds in excess of cost already spent on the one hand, and is included as a cost in the calculation, which is calculated on the basis of future surpluses on the other. Here, the practical question of those involved as to whether they can afford the price that is achieved has nothing to do from the outset with whether the beautiful machines and raw materials also end up where they are needed. Conversely, they are only considered useful if they correspond to the business interest through their price. That is, if they prove to be a means of profitable investment.
It is actually fairly interesting that he talks about buyers and sellers and how they have cross purposes. The seller wants to sell for as high of a price as possible, while the buyer wants to buy from at a lowest of a price as possible.
Yeah, and maybe that's what they're referring to is maybe like their idea of an equilibrium, like from supply and demand, from the the value attributed to the buyer and the seller. But
no, equilibrium price. It's like we've already basically discussed this. This is basically Keynesian.
Yeah.
Theory.
Oh, true. Yeah, for sure. I just don't know. Like, they seem to be using the equilibrium price in almost different ways every time they bring it up.
Yeah. But it's interesting because they talk about his forced austerity will come to an end. Sorry, he cannot rely on the fact that his forced austerity will come to an end because the suppliers of business articles are fighting over his budget. Actually, the suppliers of business articles fighting over his budget would lead to a lowering of prices. The fact that GM has a Camaro, Ford has the Mustang, that Nissan has the 370Z, so on and so forth. The fact all this exists actually lowers the prices of goods. In fact, if there was more competitors, if there was more suppliers of business articles fighting over his budget, it would actually lower the prices of those business articles. Hello.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
if you just had nothing to say to that or...
Yeah.
I'm trying to brain.
Yeah, that's also trying to brain.
Yeah, it's so the result of supply and demand, the price of the commodities traded, in no way automatically fulfills the economic purpose of those who act as suppliers and buyers. Actually, it does, because it tells people the past prices so that they can extrapolate out to what the future prices, the present or future prices will be, so that they can put in production plans and even consumption plans. For instance,
The reason
if you know Black Friday is coming up, you'll probably want to save money in order to buy more with the same amount of money.
Yes, but here's the important thing. These people just do not understand the concept of preparing for the future, or rather just generally understanding temporal differences. Because if you look into it and the way they talk about everything, like the result of supply and demand, the price of the commodities traded in no way automatically fulfills the economic purpose of those who act as suppliers and buyers. They may not regard the price mechanism as a central control instrument for the successful distribution of goods, if only because the respective price intended to guarantee proceeds in excess of costs already spent on the one hand and is included as a cost, blah, blah, blah. It's just cost, whatever. What I'm trying to say is that the way they see these things is that they look at prices now while trying to claim that the prices now do not account for anything in the future or the past or anything like that, when in reality all that prices do is that they essentially are a ratio of the demand, supply, money itself, currencies, stuff like that. It just shows you that this thing is worth this much and you have this much money. So yeah, but if you go to a different place where there's less of that thing, the price will be higher because there is less of that thing, and so on and so forth. And you have to take the whole thing together to actually understand what the fuck is going on with prices and why it's being explained like this and that. Because if you just look at one price of a burger in a joint somewhere in nowhere, you won't be able to deduce that much at all from it. But if you look at the many different burgers and then compare it with many different prices of beef, many different prices of grain, and so on and so forth, you will soon realize what the prices are telling you. But on the face value, prices don't tell you much other than just how much money you need to pay for it. And they're looking at it from that perspective, that all prices are doing is just telling you how much it's worth. And that's it. It's just profit. Profit that, profit this, cost that, cost this. It's never about the actual intrinsic reason why the price is the way it is. Sure, prices have costs in them. Sure, they have the profit margin in them. Sure, wages are derived from it usually. But here's the important thing. Those components themselves come from prices. Those prices come from different components and prices, and those things come from the raw resources themselves. And depending on how available those resources are, the different stuff that they're going to be talking about, like marginal utility and trying to say that it's an invention and stuff like that, they essentially say that the quantity at the very end of the entire chain doesn't matter. The prices will just fluctuate because the entities that control the economy are just the ones who determine the prices.
And it's
Yeah,
actually.
At least that's what
Go ahead, Taylor. You haven't spoken in a while.
yeah. I was just gonna say that they don't really. I mean, as Austrians, we regard prices as information and look at it, in a more broad. And Thomas said it well. Like, you're looking at different levels of production, different levels of, prices derived from prices that are derived from resources that have prices, blah blah blah. It's just it's an extension. It's a process of information, and they're just saying that, like, it's mostly on like a central bank or policy.
Right, but it they kind of view it as the
Fluctuation.
in the opposite direction. They see that they basic
I mean,
they basically see it as the price of a good is just what it is, and consumers just have
Yeah.
to kind of deal with it. Meanwhile, Austrians will see the price of a good, what people are willing to pay for a good, as the starting point, and then entrepreneurs will take into account the cost of various inputs, whether they be capital goods, labor, um, and um, the raw resources as um, costs, and they will see if, okay, let's say we're making a tablet, and imagine tablets have never been made before. Well, we can look at laptops and see how much people are spending on laptops, and figure out this might be what they would pay for a tablet. So, what goes into making a tablet? Well, it needs to have a touch screen, it needs to have processing, it needs to have memory, it needs to have storage, it has to have all these things. It needs to be of a certain size so you can hold it in your hand, um, so on and so forth. You add up all these costs, not just the cost of materials, but of labor and of capital goods to actually build it. And then you see if the price and how many you expect to make, multiplied together to make your revenue, exceeds the cost to build it. And if it is,
yes,
if it's a profit, that tells you that it is a worthwhile activity.
endeavor.
Yeah, endeavor. And if it's a loss, it tells you that those resources, the labor, the capital goods, the raw resources, are needed elsewhere in the economy.
Right.
Yeah, again, where Austrians have a well understood, you know, theory of prices and everything and the process that, comes with it, and then these people just think that it's an incredibly arbitrary process,
Yep.
which is insane.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's
Imagine
this is
thinking,
why, like, whenever you talk to a Marxist or anyone who doesn't understand, you basically have to explain how the entire economy works, because they're just like, oh, like, I was talking to one of my friends that is not into economics. She's just an engineer, and she's like, oh yeah, prices come from the cost of producing something, and I'm like, no. Like, it'll take like half an hour to explain how that is wrong.
Yeah.
well, I'd say part of it definitely comes from costs. You do have to make up for costs. It's the base price anyway.
Well, no,
Well,
no,
yeah.
but
I mean, costs are a factor, but
Like, think about it this way: you wouldn't be able to make any profit on a device that the costs of are exceeding the market price.
well, no,
You
but
wouldn't be able to do anything.
no, but it is not that's not where you get price. You get price from consumers. It is
Sure, sure.
and then it is the fact that and then you
It
figure
just goes into the
then
margin.
you just do the entrepreneurial calculation that I just said, And then as more entrepreneurs get into the tablet industry, you will have to compete on price with them, and so it lowers and lowers until the price becomes analogous to the cost to produce it. But that is not where price comes from. It is just a happenstance of the market that prices reduce down to the cost.
Okay. I didn't mean it in the sense that all price comes from cost, or that a portion of it is definitely cost. Rather, the fact that if you're trying to sell something as a business, and you are the one setting the price of the thing on this little thing, not the price of the good itself on the entire market, but your own price at which you're going to try to sell it, that comes from a combination of the costs and the profit margin.
Yeah, and that article that I sent from Fee earlier addresses that.
And you just have to, if you can't sell it, you just start cutting into the profit margin, and then the moment your profit margin is super tiny, you start cutting into the costs. It's coming from the price to the costs themselves, and that infers it's a connected relationship.
Right. So your decision to produce it is based on the price of it being more than the costs, which is kind of what I was explaining earlier. But this confusion of it is wrong to say that the costs determine the price. The price is actually determined by the consumer, and so that's what on
the market.
Yeah, on the market.
On the market. The price is determined by the consumer on the market.
Yep.
If you exclude the market, as in you don't have the consumers to buy, sell, you don't have the other individuals, other companies producing the same or similar goods, then the price is entirely determined one half, not in the thing, but the ratio of what they contribute in quotation marks. One half is cost, the other is profit margin. One half is how much you need to get in order to make another one, and then you have the profit margin, which is what allows you to expand. That's the basis. That's when you enter the market, and then the market hits you over the head with either, oh shit, you have so much space, you could increase the profit margin so much more, or the other way around, where, oh shit, you are selling it for too much, and that modifies your price in the end and determines it.
Right, because
because we mustn't forget, prices, there is the price of a thing in an area, like the general price, the abstract price. What can you call it? It's the price. But then you have the entry price, and then you have the retail price, and all these different prices, and they're all molded by consumers, but they're made by producers. Like, you make the clay, the consumers mold it. Hence why it's just a little thing with semantics. Like, if you say that prices are made by consumers, then you gotta ask yourself, okay, what is the case that price is made by consumers, and then you have cases where no one buys it, therefore the price is either zero or infinite, or just it's not sold. I guess you could say that. But if we talk about the actual number itself,
you mean you mean the store price?
Yes, I mean the price that the consumer sees, or the people who buy the things to retail them see, or anything like that. Not the value.
No. What I mean by price is what people are willing to pay for it,
which is just the value when put in ratio with the money.
Yeah, but this is an important distinction between a store price and what people are willing to pay for it, because you can try to sell this phone for $2,000, but people will be like, why would I pay that when I have this other phone that is less than half the cost? So just because you have a store price, like you have a label that says a price, that doesn't actually really that's not really a quote unquote price until someone decides to buy it.
Yeah, of course. But that's another confusion. It's like money and currency. Then you have the store price and the what people are willing to pay for it, as in the value to money ratio, which is also a price. You have these two prices, and then you have money as currency and money as money. Those two things. Then
Yeah,
really,
money.
this is a semantic confusion, and
Well, that's
really
the
needs
thing,
to be
though,
dispelled.
is that because economics is a rationalist science, like semantics actually matter. What words mean matters. Anyways, I think this is I think we spent enough time on this. We can go to the next one.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll be right back.
All right. All right.
1 second,
Let's give
I
it.
lost my place and I found it again. I just
So it
wanted to
says,
see how long this subsection was, and I forgot how long it was. Like I
yeah,
told you, I didn't even get to section 2, and the text to speech
which
app, which is spent 2.5 hours just speaking.
yeah, yeah. So, uh, like section 2 actually addresses our concerns, subjective theory of value and all that stuff.
Mm.
So that's something that we're definitely gonna have to take some time on.
Yep.
All right, so let's start with this next paragraph. As long as the prices of commodities meet this criterion, the market is also fine for its beneficiaries and for the theorists who idealize it, and concerns about the dwindling purchasing power of money are not raised. Many years of prosperous economic activity come along without complaints from national and economic quarters against the increase in the means of circulation, which is noticeable in the upward movement of prices. Such merely nominal increases are registered as a natural consequence of the fact that local and temporal restrictions on solvency by credit are declared insignificant via the banking system operated under state directives. The same applies to the creation of money, which comes about through the debt of the state. Nobody likes to simply and fundamentally consider the transformation of circulating debt instruments into money and capital as reprehensible. On the contrary, the interested business world approves, like the National Economic Expert Guild, the responsibility of the state for expansion and contraction of credit, the use of sovereign power, which sets and maintains the rules of the free market economy, naturally also extends to influencing the amount of credit available. That the state also covers its financial needs by converting its bonds into business means of banks and private individuals is also something that nobody wants to prevent. The fictitious alternative interventions in the economy versus freedom from unhealthy state control is a constant hodgepodge in the dispute between the economic political camps, but never affects the elementary services of power for business. On the contrary, the controversies over the degree of sovereign interference compatible with the economy and state misconduct assume that economic policy, i.e., state action by the Ministry of Economic Affairs, the Ministry of Finance and Bundesbank, etc., is constantly taking place and is necessary to support the business.
So I think it's interesting because at the beginning of this, they start talking about inflation, the dwindling purchasing power of money, and increase in the means of circulation. No one talks about this, but I don't know if you've listened to any Austrians, but they are always talking about inflation.
Like literally constantly. Like that's kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it's I forget who it is that Peter Schiff. He always is talking about Austrian business cycle theory and inflation.
That's literally his gimmick. Like that's his thing.
Yeah.
He talks about it all the time because he wants people to buy gold with his company because he has a good understanding of Austrian business cycle theory.
Yep.
So I don't know where this person got this theory that that free market schools don't talk about this, or that this is desired, like all this state intervention is desired for the propping up of businesses, but assuredly has not listened to any current Austrians.
Right, and well, the thing is that they are lumping all quote unquote free market economists together, even if they're not free market economists. They're basically saying everyone who is not Marx is a free market economist.
Yeah, literally, like they say Krugman is probably a free market guy.
Yeah, and so Anyways, so it's also interesting that so um let's just look at this one sentence. Such mere nominal increases are registered as a natural consequence of the fact that local and temporal restrictions on solvency by credit are declared insignificant via the banking system operated under state directives. Now let's just talk about the first half of the sentence because there's a semicolon. It is interesting that he's talking about the solvency by credit. They are literally talking about actually, let me just read the rest of the sentence because it will become more apparent what I'm about to say. The same applies to the creation of the same applies to the creation of money which comes through the debt of the state. Nobody likes to simply and fundamentally consider the transformation of circling debt instruments into money and capital as reprehensible. Now, the first part of this sentence, it says the local and temporal restrictions on solvency by credit. But at the end, they're talking about the increase in the money supply. They are literally talking about the Fed giving money to the banks to quote-unquote solve solvency. To create solvency through credit. They're literally talking about the beginning of the Austrian business cycle.
Yeah.
And then, so, you know, it's like, oh, no one talks about this. And then there's this entire Austrian theory that talks about it.
Yeah, you know, like the one thing that like all of us talk about.
Yeah, and then nobody likes to simply and fundamentally consider the transformation of circling debt instruments into money and capital as reprehensible. What they were talking about here is that the fact that fiat currency, is really a function of debt. It is an IOU from the Federal Reserve. And they're saying that nobody considers this reprehensible. However, literally any Austrian economist would say that we should have sound money, and that we should have money based on gold and not fiat and this debt.
Yeah, it's funny because they always like try and, you know, paint Austrians as like these gold bugs or whatever. Like, I guarantee that this person who wrote this has called somebody a gold bug before.
What the hell is a gold bug?
Someone who really enjoys gold and thinks that gold is the only true money.
Or that currencies should only be backed by gold, in the new definition of the word.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how, like, what they're talking about here is like, oh, nobody talks about this. It's completely dismantled just by the fact that the Austrians exist.
It's just like, hi, you don't exist.
Yeah, it's
you're not. Hold on. Since the mainstream doesn't consider the Austrian economics, the Austrian school of economics, a valid school, therefore it doesn't exist.
Well, it's kind of interesting because right here they're basically showing that they don't understand the Austrian school, but later on in the article they will talk about Karl Menger and von Bavrik. So
literally the second section of this entire paper is about how marginal utility and the subjective theory of value by the Austrian school is incorrect. And then right here, they don't talk about any of the Austrian critiques of central banking, of fiat currencies, of anything else. So you want to conveniently leave out the parts that we talk about now and then try to critique, you know, the subjective theory of value or marginal utility itself using the original Austrian school writers.
Yep. So it's also kind of interesting that let's just look at the next thing. On the contrary, the interested business world approves, like the National Economic Export Guild, the responsibility of the state for expansion and contraction of credit. Now, this is actually interesting. Why the business world would want a central control for expansion and contraction of credit. Forget who said this, but basically, this central control is socialism, is a form of socialism, and such that if socialism is understood to be a method of consolidating and controlling the economy, not the economy, power, this makes entire sense. This interested business mode of wanting it makes sense because they want to consolidate and be in control of the economy and therefore have all this power. It is therefore let me just get the quote so I can actually say it. Because I tweeted about this yesterday, not even realizing that I'd be talking about this.
The Mises quote?
Oh, did I talk about... No, it's... Sometimes I, If one understands that socialism is not a share the wealth program, but is in reality a method to consolidate and control the wealth, then the seeming paradox of super rich men promoting socialism is no paradox at all. Instead, it becomes logical. Even the perfect tool of power-seeking megalomaniacs, communism, or more accurately socialism, is not a movement of downtrodden masses, but of the economic elite, by Gary Allen. And this is why many companies helped finance the USSR's creation, because they wanted to become the state corporations that the USSR eventually created.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's essentially, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there whenever it comes to why these companies finance these centralized movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
There's
all,
something on.
Yeah, it's and actually this leads us into the next point. The fictitious alternative, interventions in the economy versus freedom from unhealthy state control, is a constant hodgepodge of the dispute between the economic political camps, but never affects the elementary services of power for business. Well, the entire reason that business wants the state to basically become more and more socialist over time is so that they can control it. Control the economy, as we just kind of discussed. It's the elementary. They even call it elementary. It's very interesting that they kind of see this and then they're like, well, giving the state even more control is the answer to this.
That's that's about all I would say too.
And then they kind of switched gears at the last sentence. On the contrary, the controversies over the degree of sovereign interference compatible with the economy and state misconduct assume that economic policy, i.e. state action by the Ministry of Economic Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, and the Bundesbank, etc., is constantly taking place and necessary to support business. Actually, unless you're a Keynesian, this doesn't make any sense, or potentially a Chicago school economist.
Yeah, if you're a monetarist, maybe.
Yeah, but generally, if you want quote-unquote freedom from unhealthy state control, you actually don't want economic policy, really. You want the state to, as much as possible, remove itself from the economy. And therefore, economic policy should not be constantly taking place, and it is not necessary to support the business. In fact, bailing out businesses, supporting regulations that help keep businesses as huge corporations, so on and so forth, actually hurts the market because it constrains competition, it increases prices, because there are a bunch of lawyers that need to get involved to make sure that you're following the regulations properly, and so on and so forth. Instead of the assumptions that they say that we make, it is in fact the exact opposite of that is our claim.
Yeah, that is like the exact opposite of what we say. It could not be more antithetical to what we always talk about.
Hoplu just commented, "You did not just make it at the end. We are not even a quarter of the way done with this."
And I don't think either of anyone is gonna be in this forever, just until the end. I think there should be multiple parts.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's probably gonna be 3 parts because no one wants to do that 8-hour stream.
Debunking this article is a full-time job now.
Literally a full-time job.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of I guess what it felt like reading this article is kind of probably how it felt like when Mises and Hayek were having the socialist debate in the 1930s, because it's just like you just have to explain the very, very basics of the market economy to this. And this is why actually the best article of the 20th century, the best economic article of the 20th century came out of this debate. It is the economic calculation problem in the socialist commonwealth, because Mises had to explain how private property and people demanding things actually creates the price structure, and that a lack of the ability to exchange in the production sphere actually just breaks down the entire economy. And as Solano, I can't really pronounce that name. I forget. I'm just kind of blanking on how to exactly pronounce it.
Salerno?
Yeah, Joseph Solano. He kind of explained that in true socialism, at least the truest socialism that we have found today, existed in the USSR between 1917 and 1920, and it was war socialism. And Lenin got rid of all prices and told people to produce based on the labor theory of value. And what happened was production broke down, people left cities and became small roaming war bands that were going around the countryside and just pillaging from the rural areas as well as living off the land. And this is actually the type of socialism that can exist, because it is not a complex society that needs all these factors of production and so forth. It is a very simple society that can be acted upon rationally. So yeah, it's that not acted upon rationally, but people can act through just rational thought. For instance, if you alone are washed up on a desert island, you don't need money to figure out that you need shelter, you need water, that you need food, and that you should use your own subjective valuations of these things to determine what you should use to how you should use your labor to provide these things that you want.
Yeah, it's I don't know who wrote that article on Crossoian economics. For Mises, it could have been honestly could have been a Rothbard. Um, but yeah, what you were just referring to whenever it comes to just like the most basic wash up on an island economics. I'll try and find that.
Yeah.
But yeah, not really that important. But I'll have to make a note of that.
Right, and we can talk about that later. But it's just an interesting side note that you basically have to like explain the whole of economic theory to these people. These people.
Yeah, literally, like where we work from.
Yep. Which is a good exercise in making sure that you actually understand economics, and it's not just like this thing that, oh, I support Austrian economics, and then someone asks what it is, and you're just kind of like flustered and like it's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you'll see that with especially a lot of like, not to take a shot at the agorists, they're not the ones who we're picking on right now, but what you were talking about yesterday too, like where it's like the Bitcoin types, where they just like they're like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's what brought me to Austrian economics, and then like
What are
you'll
Austrian
bring up, like,
economics?
essential Austrian economics like tenets, and they'll just be like, what?
Yep.
Like
Tenets?
I thought it was just competing currencies.
Did you mean like the tenets of Austrian economics?
Yeah, so like what is
That
the definition of a commodity? What is the definition of money? What is
right, right.
and like in my article on on cryptocurrencies, I kind of went into these definitions and no one had any idea what the hell these definitions meant. At least not the people that were really mad at me about it. And so it was like, yeah, this is kind of proving that you don't know Austrian economics. If I am quoting out of principles of economics and you don't understand it, and it's like, well, this is the very basis of what economics is. As
I should preface myself a little bit in the sense that I am literally not read at all, but I guarantee you that I understand the rationale better than any of these people.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah,
It's
there's a
important.
lot you can learn just by watching Mises lectures.
It's about connecting the dots, like rationalizing it and then figuring out if the rationale matches up, and if it does, then you can easily learn all the other all the definitions themselves. But if you understand how it works, where do the things come from, how do they interact, the definitions themselves, you do not necessarily need to know them. If you know how they interact and work like, you don't need to know them in precise means, because what is the point of precisely knowing something if you know it with enough understanding to properly use it? Because if you know it enough to properly use it, you can explain it in your words, rather than knowing it for word for word and then just parroting it and not understanding it. It's one thing to understand it, and it's another thing to know what it is.
Right. The only thing I would caution against there is that formal training actually does help in practice. Actually being able to fully understand fully know what the definitions are, so that way you don't make
Of
a
course.
mistake essentially in practice. So
What I'm saying is, like, for word understanding, like not understanding, but knowing the definition rather than understanding the words that are there. Because if you understand the words that are there, you do not need to know all of them in the correct order, as long as you know how they interact in this whole thing.
okay, yeah.
Which is why I'm complaining about these goddamn paragraphs, because come on, you can explain it with like 3 words. Stop putting too many words in these paragraphs. Just say that capitalism is bad and that you don't know what you're talking about, and there you go.
Yeah, no, it's very Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but if you understand what the words are, if someone just gives you the textbook definition of it, you're gonna understand what that textbook definition means. You're not gonna be like, well, I don't understand what this means, so I'm just gonna attack you for something you've already, covered.
Right, yes, of course. I'm not criticizing that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
more so just pointing out the fact that I never read a book when it comes to economics unless I needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely still understand the logic and rationale better than some of these Bitcoin types.
Yep.
Because it's all about if you aren't going to be well read, you should at least try to be wise and do a lot of introspection, working with other people as well. So intra and introspection, just trying to figure out how the things work from the people, rather than just being like, oh, I know how everything works, I'm gonna go ahead and pretend that none of this means anything and pretend that this person just attacked me because, or whatever, you know?
Yep.
Like, there is a difference between a scholar and a sage, but both of them are equally valid.
Yeah.
Because as the scholar is learned, he understands the things in a technical and practical way, whereas the sage is, I guess, experienced. They have practical knowledge and wisdoms and stuff like that. And it is an important thing that the sages have a different outlook than the scholars, because if we just disregard the sages, we're going to end up with just putting ourselves in a little echo chamber with no way to really figure out if the things are truly the way they work, unless you, of course, use the principles that you base it on. But given enough time, you are going to forget them. I mean, just look at the way that a lot of people who go around shouting that you should read a book of some kind usually end up not knowing a damn about the whole thing. Like, for instance, the whole thing like Konkin is the greatest, when in reality Konkin is not as good as they say at all, because you read the books. And it's just, bruh, what are you saying? It's the same here. They are scholarly, but they sure as fuck aren't sages. They don't know anything they're talking about other than that they have read the books and put the words together. They take the books and interpret them in their own ways, because of the fact that while they may have read the books, they may remember the definitions, their wisdom is not in the correct place. They don't understand it. So they try to understand it their own way.
Yeah.
So long things be made short. I don't know. I'm not an English speaker. Just TLDR, or too long didn't listen. It is important to understand what you're talking about as much as it is important to know the words. And in some cases, it is more important to understand how the things work rather than knowing the words.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know when you have to go, Thauma. I'm just gonna let you know it's
I know it's 8:30. It's 8:30. I still have like a half an hour, so let's at least go through another paragraph.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know how much time you needed to travel to the place. So, anyways,
I'm not going to a place. I'm going to be in a different voice chat, and I can't cut it.
oh, okay.
We've already shifted this event and stuff like that multiple times, and I don't really want to, shift it again because of this.
All right. Yep. Let me read this. All right. So, the complaints about inflation, which is said to have suddenly destroyed a balance that does not appear as an end in the calculation of any economic entity, do not deny the right of the authorities, which take extensive care of money creation, but the usability of the means they have thrown onto the market. However, this occasion is appreciated in a manner that leaves no doubt about what the dear money fails for. Yeah, fails for. Although the lawyers of the fight against inflation like to quote the little man's wallet, they constantly refrain from the obvious call for wage increases. Ugh. Nobly, they connive over the consummated use of the ever-expanding credit according to state needs. That the inflation they condemn was only caused because the business world made ruthless use of the liquidity provided by the state-licensed, offered, and controlled credit system is not considered worth mentioning. The practical interest in the market rather puts the warning into the mouth of the disputants against the arch-evil of inflation for the sake of God and the market economy. A compensation of the lost purchasing power of lower incomes should be omitted. Such a thing, they argue, would be a decisive obstacle to the use of money that is already inflationary for profitable investments. In their sermons on the factual law called Wage Price Spiral, they openly anticipate the reaction which they are authorized to practice, and this without fear that the theorists of the market economy reproach them for the incredibility of the broadly hypocritical concern about inflation. None of the economic teachers likes to claim that neither state authorities nor banks or entrepreneurs exercise the cyclically conjured up consideration for a constant purchasing power of money. That on the contrary, they cause the inflation too, which they so gladly refer when in their beloved market economy, the much vaunted functions of price and money turn out differently than their idealistic images.
Okay, let's start with the beginning. So they go back to inflation, and they do not deny the right of the authorities, which take extensive care of money creation, but the usability of the means they have thrown onto the market. That's actually something that more ANCAPs actually do not, they actually do deny the right of the authorities to basically control money. They think it should be privately controlled instead of the state controlling it. So
I'd call it general ownership, in the sense that it isn't like, if you say private to these people, they're like, oh, the businesses, ew. Like, no, what you mean is that generally businesses or people or anyone really with the means to do it and the means to provide it and the general understanding of the people in the area and stuff like that, they own it. Since it's not a tangent, god damn it. But the issue is these people do not understand the language they're trying to criticize. They do not. And as such, everything they read, say, and stuff like that, they will either misconstrue or just not understand. And so when we explain things like ANCAPs want the money to be privately owned, we mean that we want any fucking schmuck who can actually make a currency or money or whatever, provide it, to make it, because we don't want the state. We don't want a monopoly. We want a, I don't know, poly. We want a general ownership by either an individual or a collective, but never one entity and exclusively one entity.
right, so it's not so much that we want this corporation A to own the money supply. We actually want a competition of money, and if you're a true Rothbardian, you don't want money to just be this fiat or what's it called when you only have a certain percentage of money in reserves to what you have loaned out.
Fractional reserve banking.
Yeah, that.
Fractional,
You actually see that as fraud. What you want instead is money to
Yes.
be, for currency, to be money receipts. To say
Yes.
that I have X amount of money in the bank and I can exchange this receipt for that money. Whether it be gold, silver, whatever.
Uranium backed money. Let's go.
Yeah, that's even a contentious thing among the Austrians too. Fractional versus full. I've seen a lot of. I mean, who's the fractional guys? Rothbard was a full.
Right. But I think if you look at Bob Murphy's evolution on this, you will and you see what he's talking, the lectures he has given on it, you will see that factional reserve banking is actually flawed because Bob Murphy was a factional guy. At least
he was.
the market should decide if fractional reserve banking is a good thing, but he had to come to he basically had to be convinced that full reserve banking is the only way to not be fraud. And so if you hear him, he actually understands this probably more fully than most people who are like me, and just as soon as they realized what the Fed is doing, it's like, well, full reserve banking is the only way it's not fraud. Just because he was an adherent of one school and then is now an adherent of, the other view.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like if you were a Jew that converted to Christianity, you would be able to better criticize Judaism from a Christian perspective than someone who was always a Christian.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So this is also why Hoppe was able to create the Errors of Marxism lecture, because he used to be a Marxist, and so he was able to just show, like, I believe there's two things that the Marxists believe, that if you change them, you automatically basically become an Austrian school anarcho-capitalist.
Yeah, so, I can't recall.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
So it's also interesting that so I want to talk about this specific sentence. Although the lawyers of the fight against inflation like to quote the little man's wallet, they consistently refrain from the obvious call for wage increases. This can be understood in two ways. Either that they should call for wage increases after inflation happens to combat inflation, which is actually impossible because you don't know how inflation is going to essentially change the economy and therefore change what the wages should be. And secondly, you can say that wages should be increased to undo the damages of inflation, which is obviously nonsense because wages are based on the value they add to the business in terms of economic productivity, such that you can't increase wages beyond what their productivity is without causing losses and therefore destroying businesses.
Yeah.
And so this either becomes a calculation issue or it becomes a profit and loss issue. And so you can't just say, let's increase the minimum wage and everything will be just fine except everyone has a better wage, because obviously because you create more losses for businesses, those businesses will go out of business or will change their production in such a way that they can accommodate the increased wages. But how they will do this is by switching from labor to more capital-intensive forms of business, and therefore there will be unemployment.
Yes.
So
this is actually quite arduous. I actually give the person credit who wrote this. They make a lot of claims if you're actually trying to unpack all this.
Every letter is a claim. It feels like it anyway.
Yeah, it literally feels like they're making they make new claims that you have to unpack. Literally, this is like, I can't even compare this to an Austrian.
You take a claim and you try to unpack it, and then suddenly you realize, oh wait, there's a claim in the claim.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of assumptions here. Um,
I
and,
absolutely the thing that I despise the most that makes this writing absolutely atrocious is the quotation marks. Everywhere they are quotation marks. It's just like stop.
yeah, it's putting things in quotations that they don't even that they apparently whatever they put in quotation marks is just something that they don't like.
Yes,
So
it's quite literal. It's just like the three brackets on the sides of things, like
yeah,
the names of people, but for economic laws and stuff like that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
it's just something that they don't like.
um yeah. So, just continuing, nobly they connive over the consummated use of the ever expanded credit according to the state needs. That the inflation they condemn was only caused because the business world made ruthless use of the liquidity provided by state licensed, offered, and controlled credit system is not considered worth mentioning. Again, like, I understand because later in the article they're going to talk about cycles, that they aren't addressing the Austrians right now, but they address it later in the article, and so they know that it exists, and they know that this state licensed credit expansion is criticized by almost every Austrian in existence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
So apparently, they should address that at some point, unless they don't feel that there's much value. I mean, apparently, whatever some Austrians say has value, and whatever others do doesn't.
Well, here's the thing, though. Mengel and von Bavrik actually talked about how on the what was it called, Mengel on the Origin of Money. He actually talks to a council about creating currencies and talks about how you can't just create a currency out of thin air. It has to be based on something, and that if it's not based on something, what you're going to end up doing is just inflating away the nation's wealth.
Yeah, yeah. Menger did address that in that was in Principles too, right?
I don't know. I think it's more specifically Origin of Money, which is a different book. I think when he's talking about money in there, he's more talking about what money is when it's exactly. Actually, no, he does actually talk about the regression theory of value in here.
Okay.
But that's not quite what inflation is. But it is interesting how this. Anyways, it's kind of interesting that the Mises's regression theory of money is actually in Principles of Economics. Like, at least it's. You can obviously see where Mises derives it from.
Yes, for sure.
So
I do need to read more Menger. I read von Bavrik and didn't read Menger, and I think I kind of did myself a disservice in that way.
Yeah, I actually haven't read anything of von Bavrik, and I've only read Mengel, Mises, and Hoppe. I actually haven't read too much of Rothbard.
I love the way Hoppe writes, so his books are my favorite.
You already know how much I have read.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so
this is actually
I would say I don't know. What do you think, Colton? Like maybe try and do a little more, but like the next section of this is on value. Like it addresses value in their terms essentially, and then it goes on to talk about what Marx thought value was, and then what something else. The next section 4 is labor and law value, and then the next section, hold on, let me go, is production and value, and then the next huge section is addressing Menger and Bombavik, which is section 2 out of I don't even know how many there are. So I don't know if you want to go a little bit further and then cut it off, and then maybe we can sum up the next couple parts before we go to section 2 in the next stream, and then spend a lot of time on the subjective theory of value critique, or whatever you think would be the best idea, because we are coming up on about 3 hours.
Yeah, it's the issue with this is that if we do that, let's just see where it actually ends.
Because section 2, like, we're only on number 2 of section 1, and there's 3 more parts.
No, there's 4 more parts.
Oh, 4 more parts. I apologize.
So if we were to stop at subsection 3, like at the beginning of it, we'd be like a fifth of the way through the article.
Yep.
So I think we need to
I feel like going now. This is suffering.
Yeah, so I think that we need to at least get through subsection 3, if not subsection 4, if we want to make it a 3-part thing. Unless we want to make it like
even if we make it 5, I mean, you got what the book club was like. I mean, you did a whole bunch with the other one. I'm down to make it, because I mean, these streams are for people to watch. So I mean, if we're doing more than 3 hours, I don't know if anybody's gonna make it in one, a 4 hour, because if we try and get through section 3, it's gonna be at least another hour and a half.
Jesus, I can't afford that. I don't know if I can afford another block of text even.
Yeah, so okay, I found my place again. Yeah, it's but we'd have to figure out a time that works for us. But yeah, how about we just finish subsection 2, and then we try to get through all of section 1 in the next stream.
Yeah, I'm down. Just get through even if we got to do it, because even if you guys want to do it before you do the book club, I'm down. But that's
hold on, in the thing.
The thing is the book club is not happening tomorrow.
No, Sunday, right?
No, it's not even happening Sunday. We're taking a week off.
Oh, okay, cool.
So, I'm fairly free basically at this time tomorrow and Sunday.
Okay. All right, we'll figure it out.
Yep. So.
All right. So yeah, let's try and get through section 2. Even if Thauma's got to go, we'll at least try to address the rest of section 2. And then so we got
through this. We had the sentence starting with nobly, and then there is the practical interests in the market and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I was actually going to ignore that because this is okay, actually no, we shouldn't ignore it entirely. Let's look at the end of this because I don't really have much to say about in between the end and where we left off, because it's just kind of like I don't even really understand what they're trying to say, and if they're saying what I think they're saying, it would take so long to unpackage it that I just hope that they unpackage it somewhere down the line, which, based on how this has been going, they're not going to. You know?
Okay.
So, continuing, just at the end here, none of the economic teachers likes to claim that neither the state authorities nor banks or entrepreneurs exercise the cyclically conjured up consideration for a constant purchasing power of money, that on the contrary, they cause the inflation to which they so gladly refer when their beloved market economy, the much vaunted price and money turn out differently than their idealistic images. This is actually a more of a issue for both the Chicago school and the Keynesians, because Austrians already have and even neoclassicals already have a method of dealing with inflation, and why it shouldn't really happen at all. And so this anyways, it's just kind of an interesting thing that they seem to ignore those true free market economists, and they're going after these people that want all these interventions in the economy.
Yeah, it's it could be because they're about to address them in the next section, but I don't want to give them credit for that yet.
Right, like at the beginning of this, that's what I was saying, but as we went through this, it's kind of obvious that they're just kind of going to make assertions and then just leave them.
Just leave them there.
Yeah.
But, all right, so...
On the street.
All
right, so...
Next
you want to move on next paragraph?
Yep.
All right. It's the one that starts with all the more, correct?
Yeah, all the more reason.
All right. All the more reason for economics to dwell on a concept of inflation that is not at all suitable for giving rise to fears. In any case, the change in the level of prices resulting from an increase in the means of circulation, the sheer increase in the numbers that are intangible purchasing power that must be paid for a commodity, does not in itself disturb a single act of exchange. Nevertheless, the quantitative theoretical accusation of inflation discovers in the changed purchasing power of the unit of measure not the fair correction for the increased number of circulating means of exchange, but a danger. This theory reveals a mismatch between a mountain of goods and a quantity of money available for purchasing. The inflation made plausible in terms of quantity theory, that balance between the number and unit of the means of exchange, does not take place in any way after all. Improper exploitation and uneven enforcement cause a disturbance in the mechanism of the unit of account, which theory postulates and in practice misses at the same time.
They are finally actually explaining their criticism instead of just saying like, this thing and it's bad. So let's actually get into this then. In any case, the change in the level of prices resulting from an increase in the means of circulation, the sheer increase in the numbers that are on the tangible purchasing power that must be paid for a commodity, does not in itself disturb a single act of exchange. That's an interesting claim there. The reason why it is interesting is once printed new fiduciary media is introduced into the economy, what ends up happening is that the money gets circulated in ever-widening circles. And so it can be true that fiduciary media can be introduced in one section of the economy and it has not reached another section of the economy yet. But because everyone is exchanging goods with money throughout the economy, it will eventually reach that place and the true effects of the inflation will be realized. So it actually does disturb a single act of exchange, because as the money, let's say the money that is being circulated goes to tires, and it affects tires before it affects the consumer. Well, the consumer who's buying tires now has to deal with that increased price in tires, even though the inflated money the inflated currency has not reached him yet. So even though his own wages has not been increased yet, he has to deal with an increase in the price of goods.
Yeah, and that's essentially part of the Austrian critique of the Fed interjecting money into the money supply at all, is the people at the top that get the money first essentially just get free money, and it doesn't hit them hard. But then at the end, it doesn't necessarily lead to a ton of inflation, but it can affect the consumer more than it does affect the people who get the money first.
Yeah.
So it absolutely can disturb a single act of exchange.
Yep. Nevertheless, the quantitative theoretical accusation of inflation discovers in the changed purchasing power of the unit of measure, not the fair correction for the increased number of circulating means of exchange, but a danger. This is actually, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is something that, as an Austrian, you'd probably agree with, that it is not a fair correction. 1 second. The purchasing power of the unit of measure may not... Actually, no, this is something you wouldn't agree with. The changes in purchasing power in the currency is not a fair correction for the increased number of circulating means of exchange. No. This is the reduced purchasing power of each individual currency is a direct result of there being more fiduciary media.
Yes.
So no. I thought this was saying something differently.
Yeah, I thought it was saying something different too. It sounded like it was like a sort of a Austrian critique of an increase in the money supply, but it's not.
Nope.
Well, you guys are giving these guys a little bit too much credit.
I guess we are.
Yeah, I'm trying to read into this, and it's just like, are they I should. We're being charitable as much as we can.
Yeah, we're being charitable, not, trying to give them credit where credit's due. But I mean, like, especially like if this was, if we were Keynesians or even like monetarists, we'd probably have a tougher time seeing through like how this paper's written, I would say. And it's even tough from an Austrian view just because there's so much packed in there. But yeah, I mean, at least we have like a solid rejection of what they're saying.
Yep.
I don't know what's that Richard Weaver quote or something like that. A liberal is a communist that doesn't have a good reason why they're not, or something like that. That's like how I feel about Keynesians and certain monetarists trying to determine why Marxist critiques of them are so bad.
Well, and it's like I said, it's kind of interesting that the Keynesians actually refer to themselves now as socialists.
Well, Keynes was a socialist. I mean, he said it himself. I believe there have been quotes attributed to him where he said that he was a socialist, or at least friendly, at least that. So I mean, I think he was just trying to keep his economics outside of his politics, but I'm not sure.
Well, also, I don't think it was so much that. I think it's because he was Lord Keynes of Britain in the 1930s. That in order to be paid to be an economist, he couldn't be he couldn't be a socialist. At least outright. So so this is actually kind of interesting here that the last sentence, the inflation made plausible in terms of quantity theory, that the balance between the number and unit of the means of exchange does not take place in this way at all. Improper exploitation and uneven enforcement cause a disturbance in the mechanism of the unit of account, which theory postulates and in practices misses at the same time. So this is kind of an assertion without really explaining what they're actually talking about. Because they're saying that there's a disturbance in the mechanism, and they're saying it misses this disturbance. But as we've shown, this disturbance really isn't anything, because what they're harkening back to is does not in itself disturb a single act of exchange. And we already explained how it does disturb exchanges throughout the economy.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's not even worth talking about. So we should go to the next paragraph.
Okay. All right. In this realism, however, the theorists of the market economy do not want to take the oath of disclosure regarding their statement of laws concerning money, but rather emphasize that they are committed to the practical concerns that arise for the relevant actors of the market. In any case, scientists do not break with the ideal of the steering mechanism when they turn to competitive behavior and find that business-minded entrepreneurs calculate with something other than a healthy money supply that guarantees an equally healthy price level. And a quote from Gigant the Economy: the insidious thing about price level changes is that they disrupt the market economy steering mechanism itself in an uncontrollable way. Thus, for example, inflation helps areas that are first covered by them to achieve temporary benefits and generate profits that have no steering function. This is because the flood of inflation is always breaking into production periods that have not yet been completed. In this case, the revenues are higher than the costs incurred at the beginning of the production period. Of course, the entrepreneurs register this difference as profits. Only in the following period, when higher costs have to be incurred, do these profits become apparent as fictitious profits. In the meantime, however, the unexpected revenue surpluses may have long been spent or, as is likely, used up for expansion investments, which turn out to be malinvestments at the latest when the wave of price increase subsides.
Subsides.
Subsides. After all, nothing has changed in the original demand relations. One would have to be blind if one did not see inflation chanting real profits to different people. That sounds like something about the business cycle theory.
So let's break
Talking about
this.
malinvestment.
So let's break down this quote. At the beginning, it sounds like he's talking about how what we described, how it's basically uncontrollable once you introduce fiduciary money to control how it propagates itself through, well, how it gets propagated through exchanges in the economy. Like, there's no way to say, okay, we're going to keep the fiduciary money and its effects to the defense industry. There's no way to do that. It has to be propagated throughout the economy.
Yeah, you can't just keep it in one place.
So, but then he starts talking about a steering function, and I'm not entirely sure what is meant by a steering function, because this is obviously not a Austrian school thing, so it's just kind of like...
No.
I don't know what it is either.
Yeah. So, it is interesting that he talks about production periods, and it's always breaking into production periods that have not yet been created. In this case, the revenues are higher than the costs incurred at the beginning of the production period. Of course, the entrepreneurs register this difference as profits. Only in the following period, when higher costs have to be incurred, do these profits become apparent as fictitious profits. In the meantime, however, the unexpected revenue surpluses may have long since been spent, or as is likely used up for expansion investments, which turn out to be malinvestments at the latest when the wave of price increases subsides. So what they're talking about here, the increase in prices, is the fiduciary media coming in as costs to a production cycle in a business. So what's going on is fiduciary media was injected into the market somewhere. It is widening out in ever-increasing circles, and this business, when it hits that ever-expanding circle, what it does is the fiduciary media introduces itself essentially as increased costs, and so what was originally a profitable enterprise turns out to be, because the costs rise but the revenue stays the same, is that it becomes an unprofitable enterprise. And so what this is showing is that basically that inflation could create mismanagement of planned production, which is somewhat similar to which is the very basis of Austrian business cycle.
Yeah, that's the basis of the business cycle theory. Like inflation causing malinvestment.
However,
I definitely have to go.
okay, we will
All right, Joe.
see you later, Thauma.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yep.
I'm in.
See you another time.
Yep.
Bye.
Yep. However, this is not usually shown in Austrian business cycle because it's not usually just inflation from like the defense industry or government employees, but it's usually the money gets put to banks who are then given it to loan out. So it's usually the opposite way around, kind of. That the because the interest rate is so low, things that would not be profitable before are suddenly profitable.
Yeah, they become profitable.
Yeah. So this is actually the opposite way around. It shows that how the Austrian business cycle is not necessarily about reducing interest rates. Well, how we're interpreting this is showing how the Austrian business cycle is not based on lowering interest rates, but is in fact about inflation itself, the creation of fiduciary media and its injection into the economy.
Yeah, this is definitely like I've never actually seen like maybe it's just because I haven't read enough or something. I've never actually seen somebody referring to the production as a main factor in like something of malinvestment. You know what I mean? Usually it's just something about investments. Well, which could be, investments in more production. But it's interesting to see a take where they talk about production itself being a part of the business cycle. I don't know if this dude's an Austrian. I doubt it. But referring to the production costs and the production period and its effects on is something that I've never actually really considered before. It too at length.
Yeah, and this guy's a German guy, so I've never heard of him before.
Me either.
I can understand why they are talking about him because they are Germans, but
yeah.
He is F. Gigant. F. Gigant. Huh. Yeah, I can't find anything about him. There's not even a Wikipedia article, which is odd. 1 second.
Yeah, who is this guy? Pulling people out of their ass?
No. He was actually
Okay.
referenced in a economics textbook.
Yeah.
That I found.
Oh, okay.
So, what I'm trying to do is... Oh, no. This is an article about Gigant, Germany, which is a little town in eastern Germany. Not actually what I was looking for. Yeah, interesting. I can't find anything on this guy.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Oh well. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out at some point. But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it does almost sound like an almost Austrian argument.
Yeah, this actually kind of seems, if it's not Austrian, at least neoclassical. And
yeah.
I know you actually read a little bit of Man, Economy, and State, so you might be able to clue us in on Rothbard's critique of neoclassical production theory.
Oh, it's been a while, man. I'll have to. I can definitely prime you on it at some point. I'd have to reread.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's just that it's been a while. I've been reading nothing but Hoppe and Paul Gottfried for a minute. So.
okay. So it's but yeah, no, this seems almost Austrian. I want, in terms of at least how we're reading into it, maybe Guy Gent throughout the rest of like the context of where this quote is being pulled from is not saying what we think he's saying, but
maybe we're giving him more credit, like Thomas saying we're giving this guy more credit because we're so used to thinking about business cycle theory that we're seeing business cycle theory in something that he might not even be talking about. But I mean, it does seem like to me that he is at least getting at what Mises was talking about.
Yep.
And Hayek.
Yeah, after all, nothing has changed in the original demand relations. One would have to be blind if one did not see inflation chanting real profits to different people. This is, other than something, saying nothing has changed, because that's not really Austrian, it's really, actually no, saying nothing has changed, that's ceteris paribus, I believe it is, where you just assume everything else is staying constant, but with this one thing under consideration.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I'll have to Google that. But
yeah. Yeah, but it's you don't know ceteris paribus?
I've heard it a million times, but not something that I use. Yeah, with other conditions remaining the same.
Yeah. It means all else being equal.
Yeah, all other things equal. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So, that might be what he's getting at, which.
Yeah.
I do try to be charitable when I'm reading someone because it's not like he's there to like correct me. Like, you might actually like if Guy Gent was here, we could ask him, "Is this what you're talking about, or do you mean something different?" But
yeah, exactly.
Anyways,
we don't even know who the guy is, so it's not like we can ask him.
Yeah.
We can't even find him on Google. He's gone dark.
Yeah. Well, actually, what his the citation I found of him was from 1975.
Okay, so he's an older, maybe neoclassical economist, or just something. Who knows?
Yeah, he might be Hoppe was basically recreating Austrian school economics before we found Rothbard.
Yeah.
So he might be one of those guys who is just like, okay, I might be a neoclassical, but then I realize there's some issues with neoclassical, so let me create my own theory, essentially.
Yeah. I always like hearing that, like Hoppe talk about how he found Austrian economics because he was already gonna be the next Mises, and then he realized there already was a Mises, and then he was like, oh.
It's like, damn, someone beat me to the punch.
Yeah, literally, oh shit, this is 50 years ago.
Yep. But it's actually better for Hoppe to have found Mises because now he can just be like, okay, Mises has already talked about all this. I can
do my own thing.
Yeah, I can build on it.
Yeah.
So
what's your favorite Hoppe book? Mine's A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism.
So A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism is very complex and deep to me, and it's kind of hard to understand. Once you understand what it's actually saying, though, it might be the best book from him. However, I think because of its ability to be understood by most intelligent laymen, not including Esso and Filthy Heretic, it would be Democracy, the God That Failed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Democracy, the God That Failed is the one that, really, political theory-wise, really is probably his best but whenever it comes to just like something that is a real great like great book, A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism is my favorite.
Yeah.
Just because it literally just deconstructs everything.
Mm-hmm. Another underrated book by Hoppe is Economic Science and the Austrian Method.
Yeah, a lot of people have trouble with that because it's so Hoppe, you know what I mean? Because it's so like succinct and clear, but also like spends time explaining what needs to be explained. You know what I mean? He has a style that some people like. Whenever he writes pure economics, I think a lot of people have trouble with.
Yeah,
And that's by their own fault.
Yeah.
Not his, because he's probably one of the easier ones to read.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the easier one to read, but for me, once you understand what other people are saying on the subject, he becomes so much easier to read in that book.
Oh yeah.
Like once you have read, once you have seen lectures on the Mises Institute about Austrian science and the Austrian method in economic science, that book becomes so much easier to read. Like you actually understand what he's going to say, but he brings it up in such a succinct and way and explains it so thoroughly that it just increases your understanding of it tenfold.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely, and it took me actually just watching a lot of lectures and a lot of like reading a lot of articles and everything like that, like the shorter ones, to really start understanding. Whenever I was reading like Austrian stuff, it helped a lot. I mean, we have so many resources available to help us actually understand the books, which is great. Shout out Mises.org. Shout out Lou Rockwell. Tom DiLorenzo.
Yep.
But all right, let's try and get through this giant paragraph and then this next one, and then we'll call it quits for the day. We'll see what kind of crazy shit they're gonna say here, because it looks tough.
Actually, we never really addressed what they said before the quote.
Oh yeah, that's true. We got so involved with the quote. We probably should address that.
Yeah. So.
Let's see. The theorists of the market economy do not want to take the oath of disclosure. Statement of laws emphasize they are committed to the practical.
Yeah, and so what that's really talking about is they don't want to take an oath to disclosure regarding the statement of laws. And what they're really talking about is the steering mechanism. And, well, that's one half. And the other half is business-minded entrepreneurs calculate with something other than a healthy money supply that guarantees an equally healthy price level. What they are actually saying at that second half of that sentence is basically what we were describing with the Austrian production theory, essentially. The Austrian business cycle that we were talking about in the quote there. And
yeah.
We're not talking about a quote-unquote healthy money supply and a healthy price level. What we're talking about is the effects of inflation. And I guess you can call it healthy in a abstract, conceptual, analogous, symbolic way.
Healthy in a way where it's manipulated to the way that they think is the best way. So healthy in a way where it's like in a monetarist way, where they're saying that like this is what inflation should be, this is how much money we should put into the economy right now, this is healthy, it will create healthy prices. Right. So it's not referring to a spontaneous economic order, it's referring to an order that is manipulated, but in a way that they view as prime.
Right, but that neoclassical, what you're talking about, healthy, has nothing to do with Geigen is saying. He's actually talking about the effects of inflation as they reach larger, as they reach throughout the entire economy. So it's not. So that interpretation is not even really it's either not valid on their part, or it's not valid on to say that this healthy money supply and healthy price level is from the neoclassical school. I really have no idea what the hell they're talking about here.
They might expand in the next paragraph. I'm not sure, because it does seem to address the quote afterwards. But I don't know. I genuinely, like I said earlier, I give them a lot of credit because they make a lot of claims that you got to unpack. I don't like how this is written at all. Like most, leftist economic things. Like it's very, and it could be the Austrian in me, where I want something that is like well argued and like completely logical, and whenever they make claims, they actually address them. But this is pretty arduous just for the sake of being arduous.
Interesting. German neoliberals. So I looked up the steering mechanism, and it's apparently from German neoliberals.
Oh, the Marxist favorite people.
Yeah, the social market economy. Interesting. So this guy may be a neoliberal.
Okay.
Which is interesting that he would talk about inflation in that case, because typically neoliberals are all about like some type of control of, actually kind of what they're saying, a healthy money supply that guarantees a healthy price level.
Yeah, but he's talking about something that a lot of the neoliberals wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like, he's saying it in a way that's almost Misesian.
Yeah. Which is just interesting. Trying to find... Yep, I still can't find Geigen anywhere.
Fuck it. He's the mystery man.
Yeah, he just literally came out with this one quote, and
just one quote to be quoted in a Marxist paper, and then he was over. That's his career.
Yep. At least what he said was actually something intelligent.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I give him credit.
If I was only known for a paragraph of writing, and that paragraph was just straight truth, I would be happy.
Yeah, that's cool. That's like one general with like one cool quote, and it's always shared around like a meme.
Yep.
Like, at least he has that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But all right. So you want to address any more of that, or you want to move on? Because it looks like we're gonna have a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, let's go. Let's move on.
All right, let's do it.
Oh God, this is more than a page in my browser.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's the end of section 2, pretty much. So that is a cause for concern for a scientist of the 20th century when his highly esteemed steering mechanism is shattered. All the more carefree, he reports a discovery that throws a completely different light on the market from which he had created such a coherent picture. Suddenly, a measure of economic success appears, which has nothing to do with satisfaction about the successful exchange of goods and the wondrous services of money anymore. The fact that purchase and sale have taken place and useful stuff has come into people's possession seems quite naturally a prerequisite and means for certain people to recount their money. At the same time, it is noticeable that they count their money, in other words, do not dream of distributing it among the people so that it can fulfill its function as a convenient means of transporting goods. They even want to keep it because money constitutes their wealth. If they use it to participate in the market, it is not to get rid of it and to indulge in consumption until they have nothing more of the noble material, rather to earn more of it, and because of the general buying and selling of goods of all kinds is exactly the right means for that. The respectable businessmen are not angry at the economists either. If they praise the market with nothing but unfounded arguments without mentioning anything of private property, they are happy to accept the stories of money as a servant of the commodity world, which allows everyone to work their way through the mountain of goods. And from a democratic point of view, it also does quite well if the handling of commodities and money, which most maintain, is also presented as the determining purpose of the market. Once it has been made clear, both scientifically and popularly, how useful money is for the change of hands of goods that one needs but does not have, once economic expertise has explained its custody of the great steering mechanism and tables up the problems of its functioning. then the theoretical attorneys of the market economy also remember, quite incidentally, that money is important in a very different way than in their hymns of praise for the means of exchange. In the event of market disruptions and complaints about a lack of purchasing power in one household or another, they always know how to identify a problem whose solution has to lie close to the hearts of the world as a condition. The growth of the economy must succeed. The monetary success of the business must be right if the ordinary exchange is to work. Of course, economists do not want to understand such wisdom as a denial of the unlimited possibilities of money that would have made actual their transition from an inverted, because plausibilized in the quantity of goods and money, theory of inflation to a disturbed course of business was not meant as farewell to the ideas with which they complemented the means of exchange. Instead, the truth that with money other purposes enter the world of business than the regular supply of men with good things. They want to proclaim something of instruction that reminds of obligation. If the in itself useful steering mechanism, including the distribution of goods organized it, depends on the growth of money that is privately disposable and reusable for growth, then it is also in general in economic interest to promote this type of growth.
Okay, I'm gonna bring
We should probably
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring it back up to the quote. So the quote's at the top, and so he talks about the esteem steering mechanism is shattered, and that's actually not what Geigen is saying at all.
That's not what he's saying at all. That's that when I was reading it, I was like, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that it can be manipulated in a way.
Disrupted.
Yeah, disrupted, not shattered.
Yeah, and it's not something that is part of the economy that is disrupting it. It is the state creating fiduciary media and injecting it into the market in some way.
Yeah, well, what he was doing was essentially a critique of central banking and manipulation, and what what the author of this is talking about is that completely ruins the idea of money itself, and that of money being a justified means of exchange, or of a moral means of exchange, or of a efficient means of exchange. But literally, what Geigen was referring to was about state manipulation of the currency market or of money itself. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand where he gets the term shattered from.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because just a sentence later, he says, suddenly a measure of economic success appears, which has nothing to do with satisfaction about the successful exchange of goods and the wonderful services of money anymore. This is actually has nothing to do with not satisfying the exchange of goods. It's actually showing that state intervention disrupts what would originally have been a correct investment by a business, an entrepreneur, in that it actually is basically what in the future would become an exchange of goods can no longer, because it is now at a loss.
Yeah. So, what they're saying is, what we're saying about what they're saying is that whenever something is manipulated, the true nature of the means of exchange can be either damaged or manipulated, but not but saying that it's shattered because it's manipulated is I would say a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, at best possible interpretation, it's a stretch. Now, it's actually kind of interesting because there is one short sentence, I believe 2 sentences down. They even want to keep it because money constitutes their wealth. This is a confusion that actually we talked about on the Hoppean book club. So, money is not wealth. It is what has happened because money has been because people are so many people are wage earners that they don't understand where wealth comes from. Wealth comes from production.
Mm-hmm.
The tire manufacturer's production of tires is their demand for other services. Their supply is the demand that they can have. And your wages, this is the amount of production that you add to the business. And so it is your adding of the supply to the economy that is your wages. And therefore, your wages is based on how much you produce. And therefore, because money is wealth, well, in a colloquial sense, since the money is based on your production, your wealth is actually based on how much you produce, and therefore wealth is the real things that are produced or owned.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's just like whenever people talk about like Jeff Bezos and how he has what $750 billion or something like that. It's not like he's sitting on $750 billion of cash.
Yeah.
It's resources and, but like you said, production and everything like that that is a part of his net worth. It's not just like he has a lot of wealth, but it's not like he's sitting on that much money itself.
Yep.
And that's where I think these people confuse, actual wealth and currency, which is a factor. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to make the claim that like money doesn't add to wealth or that it isn't a decent measure of it in certain circumstances. But to claim that money is wealth is economically and is just economically just
Illiterate.
lacking. Yeah, illiterate, lacking, dishonest. But like I said, most Marxists in political theory, I will say that they're dishonest on purpose. But with economics, I think they are just genuinely illiterate.
They might be illiterate, but I would actually probably classify it as kind of a willful illiteracy.
Yeah, willful illiteracy. Yeah.
Because
yeah.
We can't be the first person to have ever told a socialist these things. In fact, we know we're not the first because of Mises and Hayek.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of I don't know if you know who Mencius Moldbug is.
Yeah, I've read Moldbug. I like unqualified reservations.
He said that if anyone at this point is unfamiliar with libertarianism, that they are basically willfully ignorant.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting because, anyways, Mencius Moldbug, he points out problems, but he doesn't have solutions. He kind of just talks about...
Yeah, I say that all the time. He's great at diagnosing like societal leftism, but his prescriptions are lacking.
I don't even know if he even has prescriptions.
Formalism, but I don't even know if that's even a real prescription. It's kind of it's hard to understand. I'm not great on it. I just remember when I read like his model of it. I mean, it's inherently libertarian, but it's libertarianism with extra steps in some areas.
Yeah, formalism is, well, even formalism itself is not a political philosophy. It's actually more of just a way of going about reasoning things.
Yeah.
So, anyways, let's get off of that tangent because Mencius Moldbug has nothing to do with this paper.
Yeah, especially this paper.
Yeah, so, so after they say that money constitutes their wealth, they say the sentence is, if they use it to participate in the market, it is not to get rid of it and to indulge in consumption until they have nothing more of the nothing noble value. Rather, to own more of it. And because the general buying and selling of goods of all kinds is exactly the right means for that, the respectable businessmen are not angry at economists either if they praise the market with nothing but unfounded arguments without mentioning anything of private property. Now, this is actually interesting, that they think that they just want to... There was some concern of just earning more and more money, cash. That is not really what's going on. Yes, they are earning more cash, but really what they're doing is they're creating economic value. They're increasing the amount of wealth in the world, and therefore are getting more and more of, money.
So they're saying they're simultaneously making the claim that they are hoarding wealth, that they are hoarding money, but that they are also investing it to get more. That makes, and I said this is the one line of this paper so far where I've just been like, wow, that's a dubious claim. To say that somebody is hoarding wealth and that they're not consuming any of it or not using any of it for consumption is a lie. Production is consumption in a way, especially when you have employees and when you have other things.
In order to create tires, you have to consume rubber.
Yeah, exactly. You have to consume rubber. You have to consume labor. I mean, you have to
Capital
pay people to
goods.
do it. Yeah, I mean, to say that they're hoarding this wealth simultaneously while saying that they're investing the wealth to make more profits is it's contradictory.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because they talk about the market economy as if it's just an exchange of goods. After they just quoted someone talking about production theory.
Yeah.
So it's not even. Yeah, this is just becoming more dishonest as we go along, as they actually.
Yeah, it's actually they're actually getting worse. Like whenever they're getting into their actual nitty gritty, like, investments and everything like that. And now they're talking about, what's up with the private property thing? Like, like just randomly just say that like respectable businessmen are not angry at economists if they praise the market with nothing but unfounded arguments without mentioning anything of private property. What is he saying there? Is he saying that economists are supposed to say that private property is bad for the economy?
Well, this is actually something I find in like Chicago School and Keynesians, where they will praise the market, but will find some problem with private property, or just not even mention that the market is about people with private property.
People with private property, yeah. Okay. All right. That clears it up for me a little bit. I wasn't really understanding why you just throw, like, yeah, we obviously believe that the absolute private property, ethic is a way to, design the most productive and moral society. But I mean, if we're talking pure economics, I mean, the only way to have real economics is with private property, which is, I think, what they're trying to critique here itself.
Right, but it's not right. But what they're saying is that the economists are not even mentioning private property, which can be true with some schools, but not with others. And it's going to be kind of interesting where they go with this. I think if Thauma was here, we would say again that we're being too generous with our estimations.
Well, yeah, I'm just, I'm thinking about what I'm reading here. I mean, it's I'm not just gonna discount it just because I want to. I actually want to see what they're trying to say because I know I wholeheartedly disagree with it, but I'm just trying to unpack what the fuck they're thinking.
Yep.
All right.
Jeez,
So the next,
I just looked at the time of the stream, and it's already 3 hours and 33 minutes.
Okay. That's crazy.
Yeah. Apparently, my channel is all about really long live streams with no audience.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe we can do some stuff on your channel that isn't just unpacking academic articles, because this is pretty much more fun for us than somebody watching. But I mean, it's all good.
It depends. If someone wants to actually learn about Marxism and why it's bad, this is kind of what you want.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, okay, so the next sentence, we'll wrap this up real quick, and then we'll start with their value theory next time we stream, whenever that is. We can figure that out.
Yep.
But then they start referring to let's see here. So I'm going to skip over a couple sentences because they refer to the steering mechanism again, and attorneys protecting the market theoretical attorneys of the market economy. So saying that economists are lawyers for the market economy, which I mean that's just Marxist drivel. But okay, so the growth of the economy must succeed. The monetary success of the business must be right if the ordinary exchange is to work. Of course, economists do not want to understand such wisdom as the denial of the unlimited possibilities of money would have made actual. So I hate how this is worded, but it's very German. Like this is like whenever I like there have been a couple of times during this paper whenever I hate how something is worded or how a sentence was written, but then I remember that it's from a German author, so I give them a break. Yeah, so, I mean, the growth of the economy must succeed. The monetary success of the business must be right if the ordinary exchange is to work. So, what do they mean by the unlimited possibilities of money that money would have made actual? So, they're saying that you can have unlimited possibilities with the money, but that economic growth is more important. So essentially what he's referring to is we should just worry about consumption whenever you gain any sort of wealth without trying to build on the economy itself.
Well, let's unpackage it basically in chronological order. The growth of the economy must exceed the monetary success of the business must be right if the ordinary exchange is to work. So what I'm getting from this is at least the second half of that after the comma is saying that the business must be profitable if the ordinary exchange is to work. So basically, in order for exchanges to like continue happening, to quote unquote work in the economy, businesses have to be profitable. I don't know how this relates to the growth of the economy just yet, because the growth of the economy is based on saving and investment. It has nothing to do really. Well, it does have something to do with businesses being profitable and the fact that
I think the only way that you can further invest is if you make a profit to be able to invest.
Right, at least as long as you're talking about businesses investing and instead of consumers investing.
Yes, yeah, businesses actually investing in that growth, not just people spending money.
Yeah, so, and that's actually true. Businesses take a large portion of their profits and reinvest it in their company in order to try to find more efficient ways of doing business.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's widely accurate for successful companies. So right here, they're not lying. They're not wrong. But okay, so of course economists do not want to understand such wisdom as the denial of the unlimited possibilities that money would have made actual. So what they're saying is if there was
not a profit incentive, then if there's not a profit motive, then there would be unlimited possibilities that money would make actual.
So they're saying that they could redistribute it to the people, and then they wouldn't have any money left anyway.
Basically.
So, Christ. All right. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much the point that they're making there. You want to add anything to it? Because I think that's essentially what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
They're saying that that to make a profit is immoral because, well, that's what they're implying here. Because you're not giving whatever money you make directly to consumers that won't have anything to consume unless businesses grow.
Right, but there's another thing also. At the very, very end, just before we finish this paragraph, if the in itself useful steering mechanism, including the distribution of goods organized by it, depends on the growth of money that is privately disposable and reusable for growth, then it is also the general and economic interest to promote this type of growth. Actually, Gigant was talking about the steering mechanism being disrupted.
Yeah, it was being disruptive of the market process.
No, was being
of the production process. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. The steering mechanism and the production process was being disrupted by the growth of money. It wasn't. It wasn't that the growth of money that was helping in economic growth. You know, it's just a complete misunderstanding of what is being said by Gigant.
Yeah, they misunderstood what. I mean, you have all the quotes to pick from in the world, and you pick that one, and then you don't know what it says.
Yeah, Hoppean, this is still going.
But I mean, they spent a whole paragraph misunderstanding a quote that was picked to support their argument.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was referring to how it was disruptive, how it interrupts the production process, and how it can cause malinvestment. I don't understand how that is promoting their idea of unlimited growth or of economic growth being bad or something like that.
Yeah, and just chat. Just so you know what I mean by this is not even like a fifth of the way there. That is where the marker is, like on the browser. It's all the way up there, and the end of the article is somewhere down here.
Who's all? How many people do we have watching this? Do we have anybody?
Someone just left, but we had 3 watching, and
Okay.
at least one of them was me. So there's probably someone else watching, unless you're watching this as well.
Nope, I'm not.
Okay.
There was a little delay yesterday, so I didn't want to keep track of 2 screens.
Yeah, I only have it up. I've paused it at the beginning, and I only have it up so I can get the live chat.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, I'll start doing that too. But all right, so let's try and get through this last paragraph, because I feel like we're gonna have to talk, especially in the next stream, about their actual economic prescriptions, or their critiques of our economic prescriptions, especially when it comes to production, growth, and the exchanges of actual wealth. So let's see what they say in this last paragraph. I'll read it. What economists do not take from exchange, from the price of goods, from money, they are nevertheless aware of. They cite what matters in their beloved world of supply and demand as a condition and aid for the smooth turnover of money and goods. They reject the thought that it might be the other way around as often as they say it. It is as if it would appear reprehensible to them to admit what everyone knows, that money is not the slave of the turnover of goods, but the master of the world of commodities, and that the market has to take responsibility for the utility of money. This just sounds like they don't understand the actual process of money creation. Or like just
No. They already described money creation above, remember?
Yeah.
That?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to understand what I'm reading as I'm saying it, but it's just like it's either I'm trying to hash this out. This is a tough one. It's not a tough one. It's a tough way to describe why exactly they're mistaken.
The master of the world of commodities and
The market has to take responsibility for the utility of money.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, it doesn't really make sense, at least how they've written it. So, yeah.
So they cite what matters in their beloved world of supply and demand as condition and aid for the smooth turnover of money and goods, and they reject the thought that it might be the other way around. So they're saying that supply and demand causes a smooth turnover of goods, or money and goods causes supply and demand.
What they're saying, yeah, that's what they would be saying. They're saying that money and goods create supply and demand.
Create supply and demand. Okay.
Which makes no sense because, if you know, as we'd already described, money is not wealth. Wealth is essentially what you can produce, and therefore is the supply. Your supply, what you can supply to the market, is what you can demand from the market, essentially. And
yes.
So, what they said, like I said, it's economically illiterate. They don't understand what supply and demand is, what constitutes supply and demand, and therefore they don't understand that exchanges of money and goods does not determine it is not the genesis of supply and demand. The supply and demand is what's kind of dictating how exchanges occur.
Yeah, supply and demand dictates the role of money and the role of goods and the value of those things.
Yep.
So,
for instance, let's say we time travel back to 1907, where in order to make automobiles, it requires everyone without machines to create the car. Then we were to compare this to modern day practices, where sometimes in the manufacturing of automobiles there are about 3 people employed in order to produce them, because it's almost entirely automated. If we were to compare these things, you would instantly realize why the workers that the plant that only requires 3 workers to produce automobiles, those workers get paid more than the assembly line workers that it takes 1,000 of them to create cars.
absolutely.
And so this is actually a introduction into what we're going to be talking about, the labor theory of value. How is it that we search for labor-saving devices if labor is what creates value?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what? Because of the evil producers or something, like the evil producers wanting to save money, even though whenever it comes to certain parts that, like you said, certain, like a place with 3 employees instead of 1,000, the 3 employees are going to make a much higher wage.
Yep, and not only that, but think about it like this. The labor-saving devices, the automation in the automobile industry, is more efficient. It allows people to be wealthier.
And it also can create jobs for those who produce the
machines.
The machines. I mean, it's like, okay, well, 1,000 workers versus 3 workers, that means more people are out of jobs. Not necessarily, because they need people to produce the other machines too. And we haven't seen in any way, not exactly 950 people, but to say that it requires a giant loss of jobs is, Luddite bullshit.
Well, and something that they need to understand is that human desire is endless. And so that...
And subjective.
Yeah, but just it's endless. So let's say we make cars so cheap that you can buy like a new Lamborghini for $100. Well, people won't be satisfied with just having a Lamborghini. They'll be like, okay, I want to now have my own private jet. And they'll put, the factors of production will be such that more jets will be produced for people, or something along those lines.
Yep.
People aren't going to be satisfied with just having a jet, having things cheaper. They're going to say, okay, I have so much money. This thing became cheaper, therefore I can spend elsewhere.
Absolutely.
So, the fact that you cut jobs in one area to make something cheaper does not actually show that it causes unemployment, because there will be either new industries or increases in existing industries that come as a result of people saving money somewhere else. For instance, video games are a huge industry because as consumer electronics have gotten cheaper, they have gone away with just having a TV with an antenna going to the public stations and they've gone more and more into, hey, I want to have all these online streaming services like Netflix, Disney Plus, and I want to, and since because gaming computers have become so cheap, they have now said, okay, now I also want video games and such.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, human wants are endless, and whenever they have more ability to consume more, even if if the price drops somewhere and then there are less labor needed somewhere else, then somewhere else there will be more demand, and that it will create more labor. I mean, or more opportunities for labor. I mean, we've seen it throughout history, many, many, many times. And that's why like the sort of like the Tucker Carlsons of the world that are against automation, it makes zero sense to me from a historical standpoint.
Well, many of them look at the economic calamity of the individual. Let's say trucks are being automated, and you're a truck driver with 25 years of experience. Well, you have to now figure out a new line of work unless you can retire. The thing is, though, is that every economic progress is going to come with some individual calamity, because all economic progress is about labor-saving devices, or basically it's about labor-saving devices and reducing the price of some commodity or capital good. And so it necessarily is going to put some people out of business, and the economy needs to react to this. And so, okay, less labor is needed in this sector, and therefore people are cheap, things are cheaper for people, so they'll have more money to spend somewhere else, and therefore that sector, even if it's a brand new sector, will come about. And so something that the Luddites don't realize is that, yes, even if that driver example, when you are a laborer, you can't just assume that your job is going to be there forever. What you need to do is continuously look at the market and see what is to change. Like, is your job going to be here in 5-10 years? And if it looks like it's not, you need to start getting skills to go into some other line of work.
And it's the truck driver example also, I mean, somebody with that much work experience will have zero trouble finding another job, especially in a similar market, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like most places, I mean, just from a practical sense, I mean, somebody with that much work experience, especially if it was in the same place, you show that kind of loyalty and like ability to, perform your job at that level every single day. You're not going to have any trouble. And I know that it's like a displacement, a temporary one, but I mean, to act like it's some sort of like diabolical, woke capital plan or something like that is insane.
Yep. So, but they will, it's not, yeah, that is true. But the truck driver will likely need a new skill. But,
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
it's not like new skills are impossible to come by.
Yeah, it's.
And this
I
is
mean,
just showing that people need to, actually pay attention to the economy, because if you know that your job is going to be done away with soon, you should start planning to move into a different sector. You know?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's on you. I mean, it sucks, but I mean that's where a lot of the right wing populists, like when it comes to this especially, I mean, it's just like you're all about personal responsibility and everything like that, and then as soon as like somebody, a company might, start phasing out jobs that are, inefficient in the modern world, all of a sudden you have to protect like the individual worker and not, not actually, say what it is, which is like this is how history has gone forever in economic history. Technology gets better, people's jobs get displaced, and then they find other ones, and it's fine.
Yep. And you should actually um, be aware of something happening. You shouldn't just
Yeah, and not sit there with your head up your ass and think everything's going to be around forever.
yep, everything's going to be the same. That's actually a big, I don't want to say fallacy, but it's a big deal essentially in economics.
Yeah.
Is that things change.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
All right. You want to wrap this up? I don't think I have anything else to say about that last paragraph. I think we
nope.
said enough about it.
Do you want to shill anything?
No, I'm good. Follow me at Jens Cap on Twitter if you want. Um, Shout out Hoppean.org, of course.
Yep.
Thanks for having me. I'll be back.
Hello?
I'm here.
Okay. You said you'll be back, and then just
No,
nothing.
I meant I'll be back, like back to a stream.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Make sure you read the Hoppean. Apparently, Dr. Block is going to be responding to Jared, so that'll be fun. We actually got some recognition from a Mises Institute guy. So, root. And also, I am going to be writing a follow-up article to my strategy article, my agorist article, and a new one on individualism. So, let's let's continue on with that. Anyways, I will talk to you guys later, and